Chapter 181, Swordsmith Village. Of course, the event that took place in the Infinity Castle remained unknown, even to the Demon Slayer Corps, which boasted an exceptional intelligence network. After all, the space where the Infinity Castle was located could not be discovered or entered, not even by the Kasugai Crow, making it impossible to obtain any useful information. However, the intelligence network of the Demon Slayer Corps actually discovered that after their headquarters was attacked by multiple upper ranks, the demons, activities became unpredictable. Some of them mysteriously disappeared, some became extremely active, and some seemed to have other purposes, no longer staying in one place but moving from place to place. Some even started killing each other, causing significant chaos, especially the 12 Kazuki. With the lower ranks disbanded and 2 upper ranks slain, their actions became extremely uncontrollable. Not only did they no longer simply hunt for food or kill the demon slayers of the Demon Slayer Corps, but they also suddenly appeared and disappeared in various villages and towns, their movements and purposes becoming completely bizarre and mysterious. Upon learning this information, the higher-ups of the Demon Slayer Corps became highly alert. It was understandable since the abnormal actions of the demons indicated that everything Riesel had said might indeed come true. Muzan was about to take action, meaning the great battle between the 12 Kazuki and the Demon Slayer Corps was about to ignite. Clearly, this put all the Hashira on high alert, tightening the strings in their hearts. Moreover, the more impatient Hashira, thinking they might soon have to fight the upper ranks and even the Demon King, became eager to improve their strength. Demon Slayer Mark, Bright Red Nichiren Sword, and Transparent World. Knowing that these 3 abilities existed, all the Hashira now urgently wanted to possess them. Only by awakening these 3 abilities would they have a chance of winning against the upper ranks and Demon King. Even the usually rebellious Hashira, who didn't want to admit this, had no reason to refuse to become stronger. Unfortunately, the new head instructor did not immediately begin their training. After all, the Demon Slayer Corps was busy relocating their headquarters, collectively moving to the Swordsmith Village. Evidently, this task was not easy to complete, not only because the Swordsmith Village's location was secret in the root complex, but also due to the large number of people. Moving so many people to the village in this situation was indeed not simple. Training could not take place on the road, so the top priority was to assist in the headquarters relocation, with other matters temporarily put on hold. To this end, the Hashira were dispersed and assigned to lead several groups of people along designated routes to the Swordsmith Village. Riesel, along with the Ubuyashiki family, was among the first group to reach the Swordsmith Village. As this the Swordsmith Village, when Riesel arrived at the Swordsmith Village, he took a look around the entire place. It really was a village. Most of the buildings here were wooden houses, not too big or too small, looking very simple. Surrounding the village were watchtowers, seemingly occupied by members of the Demon Slayer Corps regularly, demonstrating how much the Corps valued the village. On top of that, the village was surrounded by mountains and forests on all sides, making it impossible to enter without going through the winding paths in the forest. In the air of this village, there was a faint smell of iron and burnt fire, reminding him of the time he entered the industrial area of Orario looking for Tsubaki's workshop. Even though the village's population didn't seem large, everyone wore a Hayatoko mask to signify their identity as swordsmiths. Meanwhile, as Riesel observed his surroundings, a man who seemed to be the village chief approached while bringing a large number of people to welcome the arriving Demon Slayer Corps in Kagaya. "Welcome to the Swordsmith Village, Master." The village chief greeted Kagaya with a respectful tone, even bowing his head. His name was Tekikawahara Tekken, a name that made Riesel hesitate to speak it. Tekken himself was an elderly and short man. Although his exact age was hidden by his mask, the respect shown by the surrounding swordsmiths made it clear that he was a respected elder in the Swordsmith Village. In the Swordsmith Village, his skills seemed to be the best, and his swordsmithing technique was the most advanced. Many Hashira from the Demon Slayer Corps wanted him to forge their swords, but only a few succeeded, showing the high status of the village chief. Yet, in front of Kagaya, this village chief bowed his head in respect. "Raise your head." Kagaya's physical condition had deteriorated recently, constantly coughing, with disfiguring, rotting scars appearing more on his face and body. Without assistance, he truly couldn't walk. Considering his condition, He was carried the whole way by the Kikuchi using a wooden sedan chair and was still sitting on it, unable to get down. Even so, he still wore a gentle expression as he spoke to Tekken. "Thank you for your trouble." Cough, cough, asterisk. Seeing Kagaya cough painfully, Tekken quickly responded. No, it's no trouble at all. The Swordsmith Village and the Demon Slayer Corps are one. We are actually very happy you could relocate here. What he said was true. When one saw the Swordsmith Village, it did not have an aloof or isolated atmosphere. In fact, due to their long-term dealings with the Demon Slayer Corps, both sides had a high degree of acceptance and a tacit understanding of each other. After all, the swordsmiths of the Swordsmith Village frequently forged swords for the Demon Slayers, building a relationship of trust. Because of this, the village truly welcomed the arrival of the Corps, especially since the entire headquarters was moving here, greatly enhancing the village's security. After hearing that the headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps had been attacked by demons, Tekken felt a great sense of crisis, worrying that the location of the village might be exposed and attacked by demons, especially since demon activity had become abnormal recently. Clearly, this made him deeply concerned about the safety of the village and the potential loss of the swordsmithing's heritage. However, now that the Demon Slayer Corps had arrived and moved their headquarters here, Tekken couldn't be more welcoming. Is this the new head instructor of the Corps, Sugikuni Yorichi? Tekken greeted Rizel, who stood nearby, looking a bit out of place. They were well informed and already knew that the Demon Slayer Corps had established a new position of head instructor, a role equivalent in status to the master of the Corps. In other words, this young man held a high position within the Demon Slayer Corps, with the highest level of command, even able to freely deploy the Hashira. Undoubtedly, he was an influential figure. Moreover, the fact that this role was taken by a great swordsman who had saved the Demon Slayer Corps by defeating several upper ranks in the recent attack made it even more convincing. As a result, Tekken greeted Rizel with the same respect he showed to Kagaya. "Don't mind me, I'm just going with the flow." Rizel responded calmly, not really caring about such matters. Truthfully, he wasn't particularly interested in being the so-called head instructor. He stayed with the Demon Slayer Corps out of gratitude for the help they provided during his practice period and to use the remaining time in this world to kill demons, hoping to accumulate more Excelia. He didn't refuse Kagaya's invitation for these reasons. After all, once Muzan died, demons would disappear, and the Demon Slayer Corps would lose its purpose and eventually disband. Therefore, staying with the Demon Slayer Corps didn't really concern him. Of course, there were some benefits. Firstly, the Demon Slayer Corps had a great intelligence network, which allowed him to obtain information about demons. Secondly, he could also train the Hashira and help them awaken their abilities during this time to repay the Demon Slayer Corps for their kindness. Beyond this, he had no intention of taking on the responsibilities of head instructor or managing the entire Corps. As such, Rizel didn't truly acknowledge the position of head instructor, seeing himself more as an advisor or consultant. Kagaya seemed to notice his thoughts but didn't mind, simply smiling gently. Tekken initially wanted to exchange a few polite words, but when he bowed his head, he suddenly noticed the sword at Rizel's waist. Ooh, that sword! Tekken's eyes suddenly lit up. His sudden excitement drew the attention of the surrounding swordsmiths to Rizel's sword. Immediately, several skilled swordsmiths noticed something unusual. Hey, isn't that sword look incredible? I can smell an amazing quality from it. That's the kind of iron that's superior to anything, even if hammered 1,000 times. The materials used to forge that blade are surely extraordinary. Saying these, the swordsmiths grew more and more excited. Can I take a look at your sword, Lord Head Instructor? Tekken, with a fervent attitude, eagerly approached Rizel to make his request. I don't mind but, Rizel answered with furrowed brows. Don't touch anything other than the scabbard. In the next moment, he removed Hermit from his waist and handed it to Tekken. What a superb craftsmanship! Tekken caressed Hermit's scabbard, his voice trembling with admiration. It's impossible to see any trace of human handiwork. It's as if the scabbard was formed naturally from a single piece of iron. It's so magical. Who forged this scabbard? Could it be a god, or maybe the heaven and the earth itself? Without a doubt, this quality, this smoothness, as if made by heaven, amazing. Without thinking, Tekken reached out to grip the handle. Stop. Riesel quickly called out to stop Tekken, but unfortunately, he was too late. Pissed. Asterisk. As soon as Tekken touched the handle, his hand was burned by an intense heat. Chapter 182, Divine Sword. Ah! With a yell, Tekken released Hermit's handle he was holding and blew on his burnt palm. Chief. Are you okay, Chief? Burned. How? All the swordsmiths immediately gathered around their village chief, blowing on his palm along with him. A group of burly men wearing masks crowding around a small elderly man, blowing on his hand, looked bizarre no matter how one viewed it. I told you not to touch anything other than the scabbard. Riesel reached out and took Hermit back from Tekken. What's going on? Although his palm was red and blistered, Tekken couldn't care less about this and quickly asked Riesel. Why is the handle of this sword so hot? Not only the handle, but the blade also has high temperatures. Riesel explained. It's a characteristic of this sword. As for why it was this way, he certainly couldn't say. Should he tell Tekken that he had used magic to forge this sword, causing it to transform into first-class special equipment? It wasn't a matter of whether Tekken could understand or not, it was a matter of whether Tekken would think he was a lunatic. Fortunately, Tekken was only concerned about the sword right now, as his curiosity and thirst for knowledge had been ignited. Can you use this sword? Tekken asked eagerly. Can you unsheath it and let me see? Riesel didn't answer but instead acted immediately, drawing Hermit from its scabbard. In the next moment, visible waves of heat emanated from it, causing the air to shimmer slightly. All the swordsmiths stared at the sword, their eyes wide open. Not only the swordsmiths but even the members of the Demon Slayer Corps who had come with Riesel and Kaguya were whispering among themselves as they stared at Hermit. What a beautiful sword! Look at the cracks covering the blade, they're like glowing veins. Hey, the pattern near the hilt looks mysterious, like a divine spirit descended from heaven. Is that the head instructor's Nichiren sword? It looks sick. As the members of the Demon Slayer Corps expressed their thoughts one after another, the swordsmiths crowded closer to Hermit. Wow, both the blade and the scabbard look flawless. You wouldn't even guess they were handmade. What's this material? It's giving off serious heat. What kind of iron is this blade made from? It's holding up against crazy temperatures and not deforming at all. Amazing. Like, seriously amazing. Eventually, the swordsmiths were going wild, shouting and clapping their hands. Some even knelt before Hermit like cult believers, their attitudes fanatical and devout. Riesel was certain that if the blade's temperature weren't so high, making it unbearable for even these men accustomed to working at furnaces, one of them would have already grabbed it without thinking. In the swordsmith village, not only did these swordsmiths dedicate their lives to their craft, seeing it as their purpose, but they also constantly sought to create excellent swords and improve their skills. Nonetheless, they were just ordinary people. They didn't have blessing, blacksmith, development ability, or magic. With their purely human capabilities, no matter how skilled, they could only produce ordinary swords. Their highest achievements, placed in the world of Danmachi, were weapons that were near third class, not even qualifying as special equipment. In the Akasha continent, they weren't even considered magic weapons, just ordinary iron. Such weapons struggled to cut through rocks, and their sharpness was their only notable quality. For this reason, when Riesel presented Hermit, which was equivalent to first-class special equipment, it was akin to displaying a legendary artifact. Tekken gazed at the beautiful blade of Hermit for a while, then spoke to Riesel. Lord Head Instructor, is this sword for sale? As it turned out, Tekken wanted to buy it. Unfortunately, no. Riesel refused without hesitation. Please reconsider. Tekken grabbed onto Riesel, pleading. Sell it to me, I'll treat it as a family heirloom, allowing future generations to study it. Maybe one day, we can recreate the forging technique and improve the world's swordsmithing and blade quality by several steps. Yes, sell it to us. Name your price. I'll even build a shrine for you at my house and pray for your long life every day. Me too, me too. All the swordsmiths shouted, some even offering money. Despite this, Riesel remained firm. No, just give it up. Riesel sheathed Hermit, finally lowering the surrounding temperature. The nearby members of the Demon Slayer Corps sighed in relief and wiped their foreheads, realizing they were drenched in sweat. Seeing Tekken and the others still not giving up, Kaguya spoke up. Please don't make things difficult for him. Kagaya said gently. We have a very important battle coming up. Head instructor Sugikuni Yorichi is our ace and hope for the Corps. It would be unwise to let him lose his important sword at this time. His words finally calmed Tekken down. Then, at least tell me who forged this sword. Tekken seemed genuinely eager to study Hermit's forging method. I don't know that either. Riesel answered calmly, naturally avoiding trouble by calmly fabricating a lie. I came across this sword by chance. As that's so, Tekken couldn't hide his disappointment. Only Kagaya gave Riesel a meaningful look. Kagaya knew that Riesel's sword wasn't obtained by chance but through Riesel's own efforts. Before, Riesel had requested a large amount of scarlet crimson iron sands and scarlet ores from the Demon Slayer Corps, which he certainly used to forge this Nichiren sword for himself. Needless to say, Riesel should know very well how this sword came to be, and it was even possible that he forged the sword himself. Nevertheless, when asked how Riesel accomplished it, Kagaya didn't know and didn't intend to press for details. Since this was Riesel's secret, if he didn't want to say it, the Demon Slayer Corps would never force him to. As a result, Kagaya helped Riesel escape from the troublesome situation. First, arrange for the Corps and the people who came with us to rest at their accommodations. Kagaya instructed. Also, please help receive the people arriving later. Tekken seemed quite dejected but still agreed. With the help of the locals, everyone quickly moved into the swordsmith village. In the following weeks, every so often, the swordsmith village would welcome a group escorted by the Hashira, allowing them to settle in the village. Meanwhile, the members of the Demon Slayer Corps, who had been wandering around the world, received a summons from Kagaya, gradually gathering back at the swordsmith village. With the demons' activities becoming so abnormal, it was difficult for the members outside to have any gains. Since hunting demons had become much harder than before, it was better to call them back, prepare well, and wait for the upcoming decisive battle. Kagaya had already discussed this with the Hashira. While they were conducting their training to awaken the 3 special abilities, the other members of the Demon Slayer Corps would also undergo comprehensive pre-war special training. For this, Kagaya and Tekken jointly developed a forest area near the village, intending to establish a temporary training ground for the Demon Slayer Corps. Everything was in full swing, and the swordsmith village had turned into a large base of operations where demon slayers could be seen running around, passing messages to each other. On the other hand, Riesel found himself once again surrounded by the swordsmiths. Please, let us see your sword. In the house assigned to Riesel, it was common for several swordsmiths to come by frequently, dropping to their knees in a formal bow right at the entrance, begging him to let them see Hermit. Some of these people had seen the true form of Hermit at the village entrance before, while others who hadn't seen it arrived upon hearing the news, seemingly eager to lay eyes on the much-lauded sword that had captured the entire village's admiration. The former group sought an opportunity to observe Hermit, hoping to learn a bit about swordsmithing from it and improve their own swordsmithing skills. The latter group was a mix of genuine curiosity and disdain, thinking the former group was brainless fools. After all, their village had many great swordsmiths who were considered the best in the world. How could anyone possibly forge a sword that would make them feel inferior? It had to be a scam. As some in the latter group thought themselves extraordinary and considered their abilities extraordinary, quite a few were merely unconvinced by the rumor. Yet, after seeing Hermit, the next day, they also became regular visitors at Riesel's house, bowing deeply like devout believers. Gradually, whether it was the swordsmiths of the swordsmith village, the members of the Demon Slayer Corps, or even ordinary villagers, everyone came to know one thing. The head instructor of the Demon Slayer Corps, Sugikuni Yorichi, possessed a divine sword. Yes, a divine sword. At least, the swordsmiths who had seen Hermit all firmly claimed that such a sword was definitely not something a human could forge because only a god could create such a sword. All of this eventually led everyone to refer to Riesel's Hermit as a divine sword, and the name of Hermit was recorded in the swordsmith village's history. Decades later, it would surely become a true legend. After a week of this chaos, Riesel's house finally welcomed a group other than the fervent swordsmiths, the Hashira. Time for special training. Can we start? Let's train already. Clearly, they were already impatient. Seeing the Hashira like this, Riesel didn't delay any longer. Alright, let's go. Chapter 183. Mystery of Demon Slayer Mark. In a week's time, even though the training ground for the Demon Slayer Corps had not yet been developed enough for many members to use simultaneously, it was sufficient for a dozen or so people to train together without a problem. Consequently, Riesel brought a group of Hashira to this place, an open space surrounded by countless trees, with piles of lumber in the corners from recent logging. Is it really here? Tengen looked at the still undeveloped land with some disdain. This place isn't flashy at all. I think making it flashy wouldn't help much anyway. Mitsuri said, sweating a little. This should have been developed by the villagers and the Kikuchi, right? Kyujiro looked around and said loudly. Not bad. They worked hard. It won't be long before this place can be officially used. Shinobu explained to everyone. At that time, all the members will be able to train here. It doesn't matter what they do. Sanemi said coldly. No matter what, the quality of the demon slayers has been declining lately. How much strength can they really gain from training now? I agree. Obanai chimed in, playing with the white snake around his neck. Instead of letting weak members participate in the upcoming battle and lose their lives for nothing, it's better to exclude them from the start. It won't do, Gyume stated calmly, hands clasped together and tears flowing. They joined the Corps because they wanted to eliminate demons, either because they lost their loved ones to demons or had them eaten by demons. If we exclude them in the upcoming battle that will decide everything, it will surely lead to much resistance, even conflict. If this causes chaos in the Corps before we even start fighting, it will bring more harm than good. Several Hashira began to express their opinions one after another, and for a while, there was some disagreement as they began to argue with each other. Only Giyu and Muichiro stood silently on the side, one silent and the other dazed, not participating in the argument at all. Riesel naturally had no interest in discussing the internal affairs of the Demon Slayer Corps with the Hashira. You can discuss these matters properly after you go back. Riesel interrupted their argument. Instead of worrying about those ordinary members, you should worry about yourselves first. Whether you can awaken the mark, the bright red Nichiren sword, or the transparent world is still unknown. Do you really have the leisure to worry about others? Upon hearing this, all the arguing Hashira fell silent. What should we do? Rarely speaking, Giyu steered the topic back on track. Don't rush, Riesel said calmly. We need to consider which ability you should try to awaken first. As soon as he finished speaking, several Hashira immediately expressed their opinions. Is there even a question? Sanemi said with a terrifying smile. Of course, it's the mark. That's right, Obanai said in a low voice. Awakening the mark, which can directly increase our strength, is the most important for us. Riesel didn't think much of the Demon Slayer mark, but for the Hashira, it was the most valued of the three abilities. While the bright red Nichiren sword could enhance killing power against demons, it couldn't directly increase their strength. Relying solely on this ability against the upper ranks wouldn't necessarily give them an advantage. Of course, the transparent world was similar. While it could enhance their senses and perception, it wasn't as straightforward as the Demon Slayer mark, which directly increased strength. For this reason, the Demon Slayer mark was undoubtedly the ability the Hashira valued and desired the most. If, by the time the decisive battle arrived, they couldn't awaken all three abilities and only had time to gain one, they hoped it would be the Demon Slayer mark. As for its terrifying side effect, in the determined minds of the Hashira, it was as if they didn't exist. The mark, Riesel glanced deeply at the gathered Hashira, then continued, though I'd like to commend your reasoning, the awakening difficulty for the mark isn't low. Just spill it, young Tsugi. Head instructor Sugikuni. Kyujiro, fearless as ever, shouted at Riesel. What do we need to do to awaken it? It's simple. Riesel didn't hold back, answering frankly. To awaken the mark, you just need to reach a body temperature of 39 degrees Celsius and a heart rate of over 200 beats per minute. Upon hearing his answer, all the Hashira froze. Body temperature of 39 degrees. Heart rate over 200 beats per minute. That's it. They couldn't help but utter such words. Not for any other reason but because it sounded too simple. Indeed, raising one's body temperature to 39 degrees and heart rate above 200 beats per minute posed a significant challenge for the body to endure. Still, the Hashira had thought that awakening the Demon Slayer mark required a very special method, something so unique it would be difficult to achieve. Otherwise, how could it be that after so many years, not a single demon slayer capable of using the demon slayer mark had appeared in the demon slayer corps? Yet right now, their head instructor was telling them that simply raising their body temperature to 39 degrees and heart rate to over 200 beats per minute would awaken the demon slayer mark. This truth truly puzzled the Hashira. I know what you're thinking. Riesel saw the confusion in their eyes and explained. These conditions might not be easy for an average person to meet, but for you, raising your body temperature to 39 degrees and heart rate to over 200 beats per minute during battle isn't that difficult. Nonetheless, this is indeed the condition for awakening the mark. What he said was indeed the truth, as the original work made this point very clear. The conditions for awakening the demon slayer mark were exactly that. However, the problem was, why hasn't a single person in the demon slayer corps awakened the mark with such a simple condition? Riesel was also quite puzzled about this. From his current perspective, raising one's body temperature to 39 degrees Celsius and heart rate to over 200 beats per minute during battle was something any Hashira could easily achieve. The evidence lay at the end of the original work, where almost all the Hashira successfully awakened the demon slayer mark in battle after learning its awakening conditions. Riesel also didn't believe that in all the past battles, there wasn't someone who happened to raise their body temperature to 39 degrees and heart rate to over 200 beats per minute during intense combat. Yet the fact was, since the first generation of demon slayers had successively died due to the side effect of the demon slayer mark, hardly anyone in the demon slayer corps had successfully awakened it again. Why is that? After pondering carefully, Riesel thought of a reason. It seems like the mark has a particular characteristic. Riesel continued his explanation. Whenever a mark awakens successfully, it resonates, causing those around to also awaken it. It was a precise description found in the records of the Ubuyashiki family. As Riesel recalled those records, he made a speculation. I believe the first person to awaken the mark is crucial. Awakening the mark shouldn't be easy since there must be some conditions that even I'm unaware of that need to be met. However, once someone successfully awakens it, those around them can more easily awaken theirs. Of course, his speculation had its basis. During the Sengoku period, many of the first-generation demon slayers within the corps awakened their demon slayer marks after Yorichi joined the demon slayer corps. In the original work, after Tanjiro joined the demon slayer corps and later successfully awakened the demon slayer mark, several Hashira easily awakened it using the method mentioned above. Apart from the periods when Tanjiro joined the demon slayer corps, the original work did not mention any era in the corps' history when a large number of marked demon slayers appeared. With this in mind, Riesel continued explaining his speculation to the Hashira. Perhaps the first person to awaken the mark can only be the user of sun breathing, or maybe there are other conditions for its awakening. In short, once someone successfully awakens the mark, those around them can successively awaken it due to some resonance. According to this speculation, it might be challenging for you to awaken the mark when no one has done it yet, but the difficulty will probably decrease when one of you successfully awakens it. Riesel's speculation caused the Hashira to furrow their eyebrows. Anyway, just give it a try. First, try raising your body temperature to 39 degrees and increase your heart rate to over 200 beats per minute to see if there are any changes in your body, then decide what to do next. With Riesel's suggestion, the tense expressions of the Hashira relaxed. So, we're going to fight, right? Saying this, Tsunemi immediately locked eyes with Kyujiro. Do you want me to be your opponent, Shinazugawa? Kyujiro clearly understood Tsunemi's intention. We still have a score to settle, don't we? Tsunemi referred to the time when Kyujiro had just become the Flame Hashira. In short, they had some disagreements, thus a brief confrontation. I'm fine with that, Kyujiro readily agreed. In the past, they hadn't been able to determine a winner because Kyujiro didn't want to violate the rules of the Demon Slayer Corps. Fighting against a fellow member, especially a comrade, was forbidden in the Corps, something he naturally didn't want to do out of impulse. However, now was a different story. If there was a reason to fight, he wouldn't refuse. Good. Tsunemi showed a fierce grin. At the same time, the other Hashira also prepared for paired combat. Riesel stepped back a distance, watching as all the Hashira paired off and began their respective battles. Chapter 184, other conditions. Under Riesel's gaze, all the Hashira quickly decided on their respective opponents. Kyujiro and Tsunemi were the first to make their choice and formed a group. As both of them drew their swords swiftly, Tsunemi was the first to launch an attack, rushing at Kyujiro. Next were Obanai and Mitsuri. Despite their opposite personalities, one gloomy and indifferent, the other cheerful and lively, the two formed a group faster than anyone else and seemed to get along quite well. Riesel remembered that these two had a mutual affection in the original work, where they were a canonical couple. It was hard to believe that the bubbly and cheerful love Hashira would be interested in the gloomy and unlikable serpent Hashira. Nevertheless, Obanai treated Mitsuri quite well. In any case, when the Hashira argued, Obanai would often rebut and dampen the spirits of any Hashira who spoke, except when Mitsuri was speaking. Clearly, his soft attitude toward her said it all. Soon, the two of them moved to the side and began their fight. Surprisingly, the third group was Shinobu and Gyume, another unexpected combination. Shinobu was almost like a goddess in the Demon Slayer Corps. Despite her young age, she managed the Butterfly Mansion quite well and always greeted people with a smile, earning the secret admiration of many members. In contrast, Gyume, known as the strongest Hashira and the backbone of the Demon Slayer Corps, was often intimidating with his frequent tears and imposing body. Within the Corps, this clearly made the stone Hashira more respected than admired. In light of this, within the Demon Slayer Corps, every Hashira had their own level of popularity. Shinobu and Mitsuri were among the most popular due to their likable personalities and beauty. Kyujiro and Tengen were also quite popular, Kyujiro for his kind-hearted nature and enthusiasm and Tengen for his carefree, honest nature. However, their odd behaviors, like Kyujiro's loudness and Tengen's narcissism, slightly diminished their popularity. As for the rest, they were less favored. Tsunemi and Obanai were prime examples. One was violent and vicious, the other gloomy and sharp-tongued. Their popularity was undoubtedly at the bottom. Giyu and Muichiro also had low popularity. Giyu's silent and difficult nature made approaching him a daunting task. Muichiro, on the other hand, was simply apathetic and always indifferent, though many found his youthful innocence quite endearing. Adding the cheerful and intimidating Gyume to the mix, these were the least popular members of the Demon Slayer Corps. Given this, it was surprising that Shinobu and Gyume paired up so quickly. Only Riesel, who knew the original work, knew that Shinobu and Gyume actually had a very good relationship, perhaps second only to Mitsuri and Obanai. When Shinobu was a child, before she became a demon slayer, her family was attacked by demons. Her entire family was killed, leaving only her and her elder sister alive because they were saved. Yes, it was Gyume who saved Shinobu and her elder sister back then. As a result, when Shinobu and her elder sister decided to become demon slayers and join the Demon Slayer Corps, they found Gyume. It was through his guidance that they joined the Corps. Shinobu respected Gyume greatly. Gyume, in turn, secretly cared about Shinobu. Despite their age difference of about 10 years, they were somewhat like a father and daughter. Because of this, the two formed a group. As for the last group, it consisted of Tengen and Muichiro. There wasn't any deep connection between these two, as they just saw that the other was alone and naturally paired up. Thanks to this, a truly lonely soul was born. Giyu silently looked at the enthusiastic battles unfolding, with the Hashira fighting fiercely with each other. As he noticed the water Hashira standing alone in the center, isolated despite being surrounded by pairs of comrades, Riesel couldn't help but step forward. "Hey, you didn't get hated, did you?" Riesel's casual remark seemed to hit Giyu's nerve. No, Giyu was silent for a long time before responding. "Are you sure?" Riesel looked skeptical. "It's just a matter of probability," Giyu said expressionlessly. "Since there are 9 of us, once we pair up, there's bound to be one person left alone. I just happen to be that person." After saying this, Giyu turned his head to look at Riesel's eyes. "I wasn't hated." Clearly, he seemed to want to emphasize this point. Riesel didn't know what to say, so he just gave Giyu a sympathetic look. "If that's the case, stop standing here and go watch their fights from the side. Otherwise, you'd look really pitiful." Without saying anything, Giyu stood alone to the side, enveloped in a gloomy atmosphere. Riesel stopped paying attention to him and watched the battles from the side. Undoubtedly, the battles between the Hashira were quite spectacular. It was as expected since they were among the strongest in this world. Although Riesel thought they weren't that great since they hadn't awakened any of the three abilities, they were still the top fighters of their time. When these Hashira fought seriously, the scene was indeed impressive. Obanai and Mitsuri both used derivative breathing styles. Obanai wielded serpent breathing, with sword movements that twisted and turned like a snake, capable of bypassing defenses to strike directly at the enemy. Mitsuri, on the other hand, used love breathing, a breathing style that combined gentle grace with fiery aggression. Both of them were undoubtedly skilled swordsmen. Moreover, the Nichiren swords they used were also unique. Obanai's Nichiren sword was a curved, double-edged blade shaped like a slithering steel snake. Its blade was purple, with a gold circular guard engraved with two snakes connected by several plant-like patterns. In his hands, this steel snake seemed to come alive. Each slash appeared capable of bending and changing direction, always striking at Mitsuri from unseen angles. On the other hand, Mitsuri's Nichiren sword was as soft and flexible as a whip but possessed incredible toughness. Its blade was black with a pink edge, a green handle with pink heart patterns, and a pink four-leaf clover guard with a golden border. In her hands, this steel whip displayed astonishing power as she wielded it with such speed and frequency that it created a web of flashing blades, making her attacks seem to come from all directions. In terms of attack speed and frequency, Mitsuri clearly far surpassed Obanai. Both of them were skilled swordsmen capable of changing their attack trajectories unpredictably. Watching them fight was quite a spectacle, with the flashing blades clashing around them, sparks flying with each collision. Meanwhile, the battle between Shinobu and Gyume was equally stunning. Shinobu's movements were mesmerizing when she used insect breathing, flitting about the battlefield like a colorful butterfly. She darted in front of Gyume, leaping through the air, sometimes lunging at him like a stinging bee, beauty concealing deadly poison. Yet, all of her attacks were effortlessly deflected by Gyume. Among the Hashira, Gyume was undoubtedly the one who wielded the most striking weapon. Instead of a sword, his weapon was a combination of an axe and a flail, linked by a long chain. At first glance, it seemed incredibly heavy, but he swung it with ease, making it whistle through the air. Gyume stood his ground like a massive rock, not moving his feet at all. Each time he swung his weapon, Shinobu's attacks were flicked aside. His movements appeared effortless, yet they carried immense weight, making Riesel glance at him with respect. However, one thing was clear: Gyume had no trouble facing Shinobu at all. At this moment, the difference in strength between the two was evident. Although they were at the same level, Gyume was equivalent to upper level 4, capable of direct confrontation with an upper rank without losing. On the other hand, Shinobu was only equivalent to lower level 4. In fact, the battle between them was somewhat unfair. If Gyume hadn't abandoned attacking completely and focused solely on defense, Shinobu might have already been defeated long ago. Riesel watched them for a while, then lost interest in the stagnant battle and turned his attention to Tengen and Muichiro. These two were also users of derivative breathing styles. One used sound breathing, which produced loud explosions and immense power in combination with explosives, while the other used mist breathing, moving back and forth like a thin mist, making it hard to see his form and trajectory. Muichiro's Nichiren sword was of a standard type, with a pale blue blade and a black handle featuring a golden square guard with 4 corners, each adorned with a hollow square. Tengen, on the other hand, wielded dual swords resembling massive cleavers connected by a chain on their red handles, while their blades were black with golden edges and a notch on each edge. Riesel must admit that their fight was extremely bizarre. Tengen's dual swords could trigger violent explosions when swung, creating an impressive spectacle, while Muichiro moved like a ghost, silent and elusive. It felt like a clash between a mage and a ghost, making it hard to determine who would emerge victorious in such a short period. Despite this, the most intense battle, however, was undoubtedly between Kyujiro and Sanemi. One was enveloped in flames, and the other in a whirlwind. Their figures were completely obscured, resembling a blazing vortex colliding with a tornado as they chased and collided with each other, producing continuous rumblings and impacts. Seeing the intensity and ferocity of their battle, one might think they harbored deep-seated hatred, each trying to bring the other down. However, this wasn't a mere heated battle. Clearly, they were both fully immersed in their fight, gradually forgetting to hold back. It became a duel where both sides went all out without any restraint. However, as he watched their fight, Riesel furrowed his brows. Since they've been fighting intensely, shouldn't their heart rates and body temperatures have gotten high? So why haven't they awakened the mark? With this thought in mind, Riesel believed there must be other conditions required to awaken the Demon Slayer mark. Chapter 185, Success. Huffed, huffed, huffed. Unknowingly, within the unfinished training ground, the myriad flashes of blades and booming echoes had vanished without a trace, leaving only the sound of rapid breaths reverberating through the air. A group of Hashira, who could maintain a steady breath even in their sleep and had honed their breathing style to the extreme, found themselves unable to control their quickening breaths at this moment. 2 hours. Riesel estimated the time and realized that the Hashira had been fighting fiercely for a full 2 hours without any breaks in between. Amid such intense combat, continuously fighting for 2 hours straight, it was no wonder even these Hashira, who had mastered their breathing style to the extreme, couldn't help but need to take a breather. Especially Kyujiro and Sanemi, who were now lying on the ground, unable to get up. Seeing this, Riesel finally called a halt. "Let's call it quits here," Riesel declared to everyone. "It seems my guess was correct. Awakening the mark from scratch isn't easy." Upon hearing this, all the Hashira struggled to their feet, trying to calm their breaths before gathering around Riesel. "What should we do next?" Tengen, sweating profusely, pushed back his hair. "We followed your instructions and put on a flashy performance, but still couldn't awaken the mark. Will all our efforts end up being in vain?" "It won't." Huffed, for sure. Kyujiro, still catching his breath, exclaimed loudly. "Even if we couldn't awaken it, training like this will surely have its meaning." "After fighting for so long, I'm starving," Mitsuri said tearfully, her hands hanging limply by her sides, clearly exhausted. "Hold on a little longer. Lunchtime will be here soon," Obanai said softly to her. HMPH. Seemingly unwilling to accept defeat, Sanemi snorted and tightened his grip on his sword before turning to Gyume. "Himahima, I'll spar with you next." Amitabha. Gyume, perhaps the one in the best condition among the Hashira, appeared not to have broken a sweat. "Wind Hashira is right," Gyume nodded. "If one attempt fails, we must continue. We can't give up just because of one failed attempt." "Yeah," Shinobu chuckled bitterly, brushing the dust off her clothes. "Even though it might not be rehabilitation training since my injuries have already healed, it's still better to keep my body moving. I don't want to get beaten so badly by an upper rank again." "Me neither," Muichiro said faintly. "I don't want Master to face danger again while I'm powerless to help." Eventually, all the Hashira voiced their determination, lifting the spirits that had been somewhat low. "Well, it's my turn next." On the side, Giyu seemed to seize the moment, preparing to form a group. "Unfortunately, Mitsuri, how about we spar next?" Shinobu extended an invitation to Mitsuri. Sure, I'm down for it," Mitsuri readily agreed. As the only two females among the Hashira, the relationship between Shinobu and Mitsuri was quite solid. Sometimes, Shinobu would even seek Mitsuri's advice on cooking, so they could be considered close friends. "Uzui, let's have a match." Obanai also invited Tengen. "Sure thing. Those snakes aren't exactly flamboyant, your eyes are. Let's have a splendid showdown." Tengen, intrigued by Obanai's invitation, promptly accepted. Even though Tengen, who had a penchant for flamboyant things, wasn't too fond of Obanai's gloomy personality, Obanai's heterochromatic eyes seemed to pique his interest. "Now, it's just us left, young Tokito. Show me what you've got." Kyujiro flashed a cheerful expression at Muichiro. "Okay." Muichiro seemed to have a favorable impression of Kyujiro, as his expression visibly softened. And thus, the Hashira successfully formed groups once again, except for one. Giyu was once again left alone. However, just as the Hashira were preparing to engage in another round of battles, suddenly, the situation took a turn. An astonishing imposing pressure emanated from Riesel's body, causing the faces of the Hashira to change drastically. Young Sugikuni, Kyujiro and Shinobu were stunned in succession. "What the? Oi, whoa, What happened? Sanemi couldn't help but call out to Rizel, while Mitsuri exclaimed in panic. At this moment, all the Hashira also showed varying degrees of astonishment, their eyes filled with disbelief as they looked at Rizel. Rizel had closed his eyes at some point, emitting an astonishingly high temperature from his body, causing both his body temperature and breathing rhythm to change. Ha, ha, Rizel adjusted his breathing, his chest rising and falling like a bellows. In this situation, the Hashira could clearly hear his heartbeat. Ba-dump, 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 asterisk. As his heartbeat intensified and quickened, coupled with Rizel's rising body temperature, a dark pattern gradually emerged on his forehead. Yes, Rizel had awakened the Demon Slayer mark. Every Hashira who witnessed this scene was incredibly shocked and bewildered. It wasn't until Rizel calmed his breath that he opened his eyes and looked at his hands. So, this is the Demon Slayer mark, huh? Rizel muttered to himself. It's indeed an interesting ability. Upon hearing his mutter, all the Hashira finally snapped out of their shock and bewilderment. Oi, what are you doing? Tengen asked in disbelief. Are you trying to get yourself killed? Previously, Rizel had explicitly stated that he didn't want to awaken the Demon Slayer mark due to its side effect. Yet here he was, having suddenly awakened it, unleashing this deadly ability that could shorten one's lifespan to less than 25 years. For this reason, it was understandable for Tengen to feel disbelief. Even the other Hashira were perplexed and unavoidably moved by Rizel's actions. Especially Kyujiro and Shinobu, who had a relatively good relationship with Rizel, displayed some urgency on their faces. Young Sugikuni, Kyujiro shouted loudly. Sugikuni. Shinobu looked at Rizel with a complex expression. Rizel lowered his hands, raised his head, and looked at the Hashira before him, whose expressions ranged from astonishment to incomprehension to disbelief, with an exceptionally calm expression. It can now be confirmed that the first person to awaken the mark should preferably be users of sun breathing. Rizel explained calmly to everyone. At least, sun breathing users are relatively more likely to awaken it when there are no marked demon slayers around. Just now, Rizel used the evolved sun breathing to raise his body temperature to 39 degrees Celsius and adjust his heartbeat, increasing the frequency to over 200 beats per minute, which resulted in the direct awakening of the Demon Slayer mark. This was enough to prove that the first person to awaken the Demon Slayer mark would most likely be users of sun breathing, or perhaps only sun breathing's users could be the first ones to awaken it. In the original work, Yorichi was born with the Demon Slayer mark. After joining the Demon Slayer Corps, he stimulated other Demon Slayers, causing them to awaken it one after another. However, when Yorichi left the Corps and Demon Slayers with the Demon Slayer mark died out, there were no more instances of its awakening among them. Moreover, the current Hashira also only awakened the Demon Slayer mark after Tanjiro did so in the original work. Before that, regardless of how intense their battles with demons were, even to the point of sacrificing their lives, there was no sign of them awakening it. The prime example of this was Kyujiro, who died at the hands of Akaza during the Mugen Train arc. Clearly, the intense battle between these two lasted from night until dawn and from dawn until the sun rose. Kyujiro fought fiercely until the end, even risking his life to drag Akaza until daylight. Despite such an intense battle, was it possible for Kyujiro's body to still not have a temperature of 39 degrees or an increased heartbeat of over 200 beats per minute? Impossible. Kyujiro, a user of flame breathing, often raised his body temperature during battles. It was also not uncommon for his heartbeat to intensify due to his breathing style, which strengthened his heart and lungs and accelerated blood flow. However, despite all of this, Kyujiro still hadn't awakened the Demon Slayer mark. Meanwhile, it was the other Hashira who awakened the Demon Slayer mark effortlessly after Tanjiro's awakening. As Rizel thought about this and saw that the Hashira still couldn't awaken the Demon Slayer mark with the method mentioned in the original work, he began to suspect. If users of sun breathing don't awaken the mark first to trigger the awakening of those around them, then perhaps none of you will be able to successfully awaken it no matter how hard you try. Rizel explained to the gathered Hashira while touching his forehead where the Demon Slayer mark was. Now, you can try again and see if you can awaken it. Upon hearing this, the Hashira fell silent one after another. Even Sanemi and Iguro stared at Rizel with complex emotions in their eyes. Seeing this, Rizal spoke up to correct any misunderstandings. Don't misunderstand. I'm not opening this lifespan reducing ability for your sake, okay? Rizal said calmly. I have a way to remove it, so you don't need to worry. As soon as he finished speaking, all the Hashira were stunned. Is that true, young Sugikuni? Kyujiro quickly asked. It's true. Rizal nodded. He wasn't lying. It was worth noting that his decomposition magic was an imaginary system capable of decomposing not only physical things but also immaterial things, such as magic itself. If that were the case, such magic should be feasible for decomposing the Demon Slayer mark, right? Even if it couldn't, it really wouldn't matter. After all, dimensional travel only brought his consciousness, so even if he died, it was just the end of the dimensional travel, without harming his original body. As long as he didn't awaken the Demon Slayer mark on the Akasha continent with his real body, it shouldn't have affected his lifespan. Based on this consideration, Rizal chose to awaken the Demon Slayer mark in front of the Hashira without hesitation. With him awakening the Demon Slayer mark, the Hashira should be able to awaken it quickly, right? As it turned out, Rizal's assumption was correct. After he awakened the Demon Slayer mark, as the Hashira managed to raise their body temperatures to 39 degrees and increase their heart rates to over 200 beats per minute, they consecutively awakened their own Demon Slayer marks. We did it! Sanemi clenched his fists and exclaimed in excitement as a green windmill pattern appeared on his right cheek. It's a success indeed. Obanai looked at his left hand, where a purple snake-like pattern extended up to his left cheek. Is this the Demon Slayer mark? Muichiro touched his face, where a cloud-like pattern stretched from his left temple to his right cheek. Chapter 186, Overconfident. Not only Sanemi, Obanai, and Muichiro, but the other Hashira also had awakened the Demon Slayer mark. Shinobu's mark was located above her collarbone, with patterns resembling an azure butterfly. Mitsuri's mark was on her left neck, with patterns resembling two mirroring hearts with wings. Gyumei's mark was on both of his arms, with patterns resembling gray-black fissures. Tengen's mark was on his shoulder, with patterns resembling golden musical notes. Even the always alone Gyu awakened his mark on his left cheek, with patterns resembling streams of water. As for Kyujiro, his mark was just like Rizal's, located on his forehead, with patterns resembling deep red flames. At this moment, all the Hashira had successfully awakened the Demon Slayer mark and felt ecstatic as they tested their newfound power. Amazing, it really makes you stronger. Shinobu's expression was filled with astonishment as she spoke. Among the 9 Hashira, her strength had always been the weakest, even compared to most members of the Demon Slayer Corps. No choice. She was petite, standing at only 151 cm tall and weighing a mere 37 kg. At just 18, she was one of the youngest Hashira in the Demon Slayer Corps, second only to Muichiro. Moreover, being a girl and lacking the special body constitution of someone like Mitsuri, Shinobu still lacked decent physical strength despite mastering a breathing style. Because of this, among the 9 Hashira, Shinobu's physical strength was the weakest, so weak that she couldn't even cut a demon's neck with her Nichiren sword. However, to compensate for her lack of strength, she created insect breathing, which featured rapid thrusting and movement techniques. With insect breathing, she could unleash astonishingly fast movements and thrusts powerful enough to pierce through rocks. Coupled with her lethal poison, she could kill demons effortlessly. Now, Shinobu was surprised to find that with the Demon Slayer mark, her strength had greatly increased. She believed she should be able to behead demons with her physical strength alone. This feeling is fascinating. Obanai, who ranked second weakest in strength among the 9 Hashira, muttered in admiration. I feel super flamboyant now. As expected of me, the god of festivals. Tengen struck a pose, looking narcissistic. Isn't it a bit concerning for a girl to have such powerful strength? Mitsuri, feeling like she could effortlessly lift a life-sized boulder above her head, suddenly began to worry about her own girly power. Not bad. Kyujiro cheered loudly as he felt his strength. Watching the Hashira feel the Demon Slayer mark's power, Rizal nodded in approval. Now that you've all succeeded, I suppose I can get rid of mine. Rizal spoke calmly, touching his forehead with his finger, where a subtle red light was pulsating. Under a small crimson vortex on his finger, the Demon Slayer mark on his forehead soon vanished. It first turned into scattered broken patterns, then gradually disappeared, like chalk marks being erased from a blackboard, vanishing without a trace. Quote. As the Hashira watched this scene, they were dumbfounded. After all, the ability they had all desperately sought was so easily given up by Rizel, leaving them with complex feelings. However, at the same time, they also felt relieved. Looks like it can really be removed. Shinobu breathed a sigh of relief. That's for the best, Gyume said tearfully and emotionally. There's no need for a youngster like him to sacrifice his precious life for our long-held wishes. In his view, Rizel being able to get rid of the Demon Slayer mark was definitely a good thing. If later they defeated Muzan and the people here could still survive, they could simply ask Rizel to help remove their Demon Slayer marks to avoid dying before the age of 25. Especially Gyume himself, if it weren't for Rizel's ability to remove the Demon Slayer mark, he might have died very soon. After all, he was already 27 years old, well past 25. If he hadn't known that Rizel could remove the Demon Slayer mark, he wouldn't have dared to awaken it now. At this moment, Rizel spoke again. Now that you've all successfully awakened the mark, why not also awaken the bright red Nichiren sword? It's the easiest of the three abilities to trigger. By using strong grip strength or letting your weapons collide, you can raise the temperature of your sword, turning it into the bright red Nichiren sword. Give it a try. Truthfully, the awakening method of the bright red Nichiren sword also made Rizel feel full of loopholes. By using strong grip strength or allowing the Nichiren sword to collide with another Nichiren sword, the temperature of the sword would rise, transforming it into a bright red Nichiren sword. If this method were true, why had the bright red Nichiren sword never appeared over the years? Was the grip strength of the Demon Slayers, especially the Hashira, not strong enough? Or had their weapons never collided with each other? It was all nonsense. In any case, Rizel had tried before, using grip strength strong enough to crush ordinary Nichiren sword, yet the bright red Nichiren sword still didn't appear. As for weapon collision, he didn't even know how many times he had collided with others, yet it still didn't appear. In the original work, Tanjiro managed to use the flames created by his younger sister's blood demon art to raise the temperature of his blade, thus awakening the bright red Nichiren sword. However, even though Rizel's blade temperature was already high enough to melt steel easily, the bright red Nichiren sword still didn't appear on his sword. It could be seen that the bright red Nichiren sword and Demon Slayer mark were of the same nature, both requiring other conditions to be awakened. For the Demon Slayer mark, it seemed that the first person to awaken it must be a user of sun breathing, and through resonance, the marks of others could awaken. As for the bright red Nichiren sword, it seemed that the user needed to awaken the Demon Slayer mark first, only then could the bright red Nichiren sword be awakened. In the original work, those who later used the bright red Nichiren sword could only do so after awakening the Demon Slayer mark, through strong grip strength and weapon collision. Before awakening the Demon Slayer mark, even Gyume, who had the strongest strength among the 9 Hashira and could shake the surroundings with just a flick of his weapon, still didn't awaken the bright red Nichiren sword after countless battles. While Obanai, who was said to be the second weakest among the 9 Hashira in terms of physical strength, could actually awaken the bright red Nichiren sword through grip strength after awakening the Demon Slayer mark. Clearly, this was totally absurd. Taking this into account, Rizel made another speculation. The bright red Nichiren sword could be more easily awakened after awakening the Demon Slayer mark. Now, since all the Hashira had successfully awakened the Demon Slayer mark, it shouldn't be too difficult for them to awaken the bright red Nichiren sword next. Sure enough, with Rizel's reminder, some of the Hashira apply a strong grip to their Nichiren swords, while others increase the blade's temperature through weapon collisions, and eventually, they all successfully awaken the bright red Nichiren sword. Is this the bright red Nichiren sword? Some of the Hashira look at their swords in awe. At this moment, regardless of how bizarre their shapes were, their swords' blades had all turned bright red. Incredible, Kyujiro exclaimed. Truly, we've been missing out. We had no idea such ability was hidden within us. Upon hearing this, all the Hashira nodded in agreement. Whether it was the Demon Slayer mark or the bright red Nichiren sword, they were actually very close to them. As long as they grasped the conditions, they could possess these abilities. It was just that these so-called conditions were frustratingly unattainable. If Riesel hadn't deduced the hidden conditions, just relying on the methods mentioned in the original work, trying to awaken these two abilities would be nothing but wishful thinking. We still got that transparent world thingy left, right? Sanemi asked Riesel with a spirited tone. Teach it to us together. Let's get it all done in one go. Upon hearing his words, the other Hashira nodded repeatedly. Evidently, they had become somewhat overconfident. Originally, when Riesel mentioned the Demon Slayer mark, the bright red Nichiren sword, and the transparent world, they thought it would be difficult to awaken all these three powerful abilities before the final battle. As a result, many Hashira hadn't considered acquiring all three abilities before the final battle. Instead, they aimed to awaken at least one. However, just a few hours later, both the Demon Slayer mark and the bright red Nichiren sword had unexpectedly awakened and been acquired by them in succession. This obviously filled them with confidence, believing they would definitely possess all three abilities before the final battle began. By then, the upper ranks wouldn't be towering walls blocking their way anymore. Riesel naturally sensed their expectations and swelling confidence, so he decided to dampen their spirits a bit first. Listen, the transparent world isn't like the Demon Slayer mark or the bright red Nichiren sword, there are no shortcuts here. Riesel said calmly. Upper 3 Akaza is an unmatched martial artist who's been around for at least a century, and he still never managed to awaken it. Don't think you can just wake it up easily this time. As soon as he finished speaking, Riesel slowly drew his sword. What are you doing? Mitsuri asked in fear, taking a step back, while the other Hashira instantly became alert. Riesel, however, smiled. You know, the transparent world is something that can only be reached by giving it your all and enduring pain. Upon hearing his words, a bad feeling arose in the hearts of every Hashira. In the next moment, this bad feeling came true. I'll be your opponent this time. Come at me together. Riesel's body emitted a heat intense enough to scorch the air. Don't worry, I'll use the flat side of the blade. I won't kill you or break your swords. But to get you to awaken the transparent world, don't expect me to go easy on you, so be mentally prepared. Surprisingly, his calm words made even some of the toughest Hashira among the 9 involuntarily gulp. Before long, flames erupted in the forest, marking the beginning of this hellish special training session. Chapter 187, Riesel's Reputation. The conditions to awaken the transparent world, true to its nature, remained vague and ambiguous. It was said that one could awaken this ability after giving their all and enduring pain, but just like the Demon Slayer mark and the bright red Nichiren sword, had no one else fulfilled these conditions before. Certainly not. What this world didn't lack was people who had given their all and endured immense pain, but how many of them had awakened the transparent world among them? For this reason, the transparent world must also have other conditions to awaken. Otherwise, Akaza wouldn't have pursued this domain for over 100 years, only to come up empty-handed. Many Hashira successfully awakened the Demon Slayer mark and the bright red Nichiren sword in the original work, but when it came to the transparent world, the number of people who could awaken it was scarce, only 2 to 3 people. Therefore, in Riesel's view, the transparent world should be considered the most difficult of the 3 abilities to awaken. In the original work, there was a flashback scene where Tanjiro's father mentioned the transparent world. The important thing is the right breath and the right movement. Exert maximum force with minimal movement, and gradually, your mind will become transparent. In the beginning, you must remember the movement and the feeling, pick up these elements, open your 5 senses, and understand your entire body shape down to every blood vessel. At this moment, it will truly be painful, feeling like continuing to struggle will only lead to a dead end. But after remembering and absorbing many things, remove unnecessary parts, leaving only what is necessary for the movement, and close off the rest. When people want to listen carefully to a sound, they close their eyes, right? Similarly, choose the most necessary thing in that instant. Over time, the opening and closing of blood vessels and muscles in the body will be as simple and rapid as blinking, and then the light will appear, and the path will open. When the mind becomes transparent, you can see the transparent world, which is the domain reached after giving your all and enduring pain. From what Riesel knew, this scene was probably the most detailed information mentioned in the original work about how to awaken the transparent world. It was also because of recalling this past memory that, at the end of the story, Tanjiro successfully awakened the transparent world. Referring to this memory, combined with his own practical experience, Riesel ultimately concluded, I can awaken the transparent world probably because during the evolution of sun breathing, I gradually understood the correct breath and movement. Furthermore, to ensure the smooth flow of my breathing and magical energy throughout my entire body, I maximized the use of my 5 senses, which in turn, helped me comprehend my entire body shape down to every blood vessel. In this situation, the pain I felt at that time might not only have been due to the attempt at evolving sun breathing but also because unknowingly, I touched upon the conditions for awakening the transparent world. And then, after 3 months, as the evolved sun breathing gradually completed, my body subconsciously remembered all the essentials and movements. In the end, I naturally learned how to concentrate, shutting off unnecessary senses, clearing my mind, and enabling me to use the transparent world. Until this point, Riesel finally understood why he could directly awaken the transparent world. So, after taking this into account, he began to summarize the method to awaken the transparent world. Firstly, one must learn to concentrate, intensely so, allowing one's senses to expand, fully recognizing the correct shape of the human body, reaching the point where even every blood vessel can be distinctly felt. Endure the torment brought upon the mind and nerves by this intense concentration, until one can adeptly switch their senses and shut down unnecessary ones. When the nerves withstand unbearable pain brought on by intense concentration, they become resilient, undergo a transformation, and the mind becomes transparent. At that moment, the transparent world is born. I see, the trick lies in concentration. Riesel grasped the crucial point. Clearly, this theory was also confirmed in the original work. In the original work, Gyume, Muichiro, and Obanai eventually awakened the transparent world. At that time, it was because they wanted to see through their opponent's movements, focusing all their attention on identifying their enemy's weaknesses, that they successively awakened the transparent world. Having unparalleled concentration, fully expanding one's senses, adeptly controlling and dominating, and freely opening and closing, the transparent world would awaken. All of you, concentrate. Riesel deliberately began training the Hashira in this aspect, but as mentioned earlier, there were no shortcuts this time. The awakening of the Demon Slayer mark could be triggered by someone who already awakened it, and the bright red Nichiren sword would naturally awaken after the mark was activated. Only the transparent world required a solid understanding and meeting the conditions step by step to succeed. Because of this, even though Riesel consciously tried to guide all the Hashira to understand, after several days, no one succeeded in awakening the transparent world. Riesel continued to spar with them, guiding them in battle, pressing them with each encounter, and teaching them to focus during combat. Such days lasted for a whole week. However, for the entire Swordsmith village, this week was filled with discussion. Asterisk boom, asterisk. Near the Swordsmith village, flames suddenly soared into the sky without any apparent reason, accompanied by a rumbling sound that shook the entire village. Almost everyone in the village heard the thunderous roar. However, instead of being startled, they began to discuss spiritedly. Seems like it's that time again, huh? Lord Head Instructor and all the Hashira are at it with their special training. Whenever they train, it always stirs up such a fuss. They're truly the toughest swordsmen in the Demon Slayer Corps. I heard it's because Lord Head Instructor is whipping the current Hashira into shape, hence the loud noises. Ah, that explains it. Chatting like this with each other, the swordsmiths remained calm amid the commotion. At first, they had been panicked. As they heard the sudden rumble and unexpected explosion, the people of the swordsmith village thought that demons were attacking, almost causing chaos. However, after a week of daily explosions and thunderous noises, they had grown accustomed to it. Especially after learning that the instigator was the new head instructor of the Demon Slayer Corps, the swordsmiths were even more understanding. So it's the master of the divine sword showing off, no wonder. Indeed, in the eyes of the swordsmiths, Riesel was almost synonymous with omnipotence. After all, the appearance of Hermit had elevated his status in their eyes to that of a god, leading to a subconscious belief that, no matter how exaggerated his actions were, they were normal. Moreover, those who had seen Hermit knew that it emitted super high temperatures. In the hands of its master, a casual swing could ignite a massive fire, as if a god of fire had descended. Such understanding led the swordsmiths to believe that the flames and explosions erupting repeatedly were caused by the master of the divine sword. As a result, their attitude toward Hermit became increasingly fervent, and their respect for Riesel also grew. Of course, the members of the Demon Slayer Corps had a different perspective. What? Lord Head Instructor is training the Hashira? Huh, they still need training. Wait, the flames and noises are caused by the Head Instructor. Seriously? No fucking way. Indeed, this was the reaction of the members of the Demon Slayer Corps. Having spent considerable time in the Demon Slayer Corps and with Riesel having appeared for less than a few months, how could they know how strong he truly was? Even if some claimed that Riesel had single-handedly slain multiple upper ranks during the demon invasion, it was merely an astonishing feat to hear about. Without witnessing it firsthand, they couldn't feel its impact. In contrast, it was the Hashira they felt awe for. Many in the Demon Slayer Corps had seen the Hashira display their prowess, even many Kikuchi had witnessed the battles of the Hashira with their own eyes. In their eyes, the Hashira were undoubtedly powerful figures, akin to gods. Even the lower ranks of the 12 Kazuki were not their match. Because of this, whether they were demon slayers or the Kikuchi, they all greatly respected the Hashira. Many couldn't help but kneel and bow their heads in front of the Hashira, showing reverence in their demeanor. Yet, someone told them that powerful figures like the Hashira had been taken for special training by the current head instructor. It was hard not to doubt the truth of this. However, this doubt completely disappeared a few days later. The reason was simple. After nearly a month, the training ground near the Swordsmith village was finally completed, allowing all members of the Demon Slayer Corps to enter for training. Needless to say, on the first day the training ground was officially opened, they witnessed a scene that was truly unforgettable and awe-inspiring. Boom, 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 asterisk. Amidst rumbling sounds, the powerful Hashira, who were akin to gods in their eyes, were blasted out by explosions, falling to the ground and rolling a great distance in a sorry state, one by one. Moreover, in the center of the explosions, Riesel stood still, holding a Nichiren's sword shimmering with a red light that emitted high temperatures, reprimanding the fallen Hashira. How many times have I told you, don't just rely on your eyes and intuition to observe my movements, open all 5 senses, observe yourself first, then observe me. Discard unnecessary movements, discard unnecessary perceptions, concentrate. Focus. Again, under Riesel's reprimand, all the Hashira staggered to their feet one by one, covered in dust and ash, looking extremely pitiful. Even Shinobu and Mitsuri, who were regarded as goddesses, now looked like 2 little mongrels, with a dusty and dirty appearance. H. All the Hashira shouted in unison, attacking Riesel together once again. Asterisk boom, asterisk. After the loud noise, with the explosion sweeping through, they were once again thrown out like trash, rolling to the ground. Witnessing this scene, the members of the Demon Slayer Corps were stunned senseless. Inevitably, they looked toward Riesel with fear in their eyes. He actually subdued all the Hashira. From that day on, no one questioned Riesel's strength anymore. Chapter 188, He's Already Mine. After an unknown period of time, the commotion inside the training ground finally subsided. Alright, let's take a break for now. Riesel, seeing many members of the Demon Slayer Corps gathered in the training ground, decided to sheathe his sword after some thought, and addressed the Hashira. Ha, ha, ha. All the Hashira had no energy left to respond, one after another collapsing to the ground, desperately gasping for air. Damn it. Sanemi, panting heavily, wore a face full of frustration. TCH, couldn't even land a hit today. Obanai clicked his tongue. Lord Head Instructor, is truly hard. Mitsuri felt like she was about to pass out, so she could only sit on the ground like a duck, struggling to speak. As expected of young Sugikuni, even Kyujiro, usually full of energy, couldn't get up. Namu Amida Butsu. Gyume stopped shedding tears, his whole body filthy as he recited Buddhist chants. Really, he's just too flamboyant, that guy. Tengen observed that Riesel's demeanor seemed different from before. A monster. Muichiro lay on the ground without regard for his image, quietly uttering an evaluation. Giyu didn't feel like speaking, silently staring at the sky, lost in thought. If only he had been born a little earlier. Shinobu sighed as she looked at Rizel. However, her remark was met with silence from the Hashira. After all, they naturally understood what she meant by that. Indeed, Kyujiro said sincerely, if young Sugikuni had been born a bit earlier, maybe there wouldn't have been so many tragedies. I wonder, is Kibutsuji Muzan stronger than young Sugikuni? In the past, the Hashira would never have simply admitted to such a statement. However, now, they no longer thought that way. After all, for a whole week, they attacked Rizel countless times, yet they couldn't even touch the hem of his clothes, being knocked down time and time again. One must know that this was 9 versus 1. 9 Hashira were attacking a single person together, yet they couldn't even touch his clothes. Who would have believed it before? Not to mention, except for Gyume, all of them were fighting while using the Demon Slayer mark. Gyume, due to his old age, which posed a risk of immediate death upon its use, had Rizel help him get rid of the Demon Slayer mark after he had successfully awakened it previously. As a result, during these days of fighting, he had been fighting without using it. However, since Gyume was already the strongest in the Demon Slayer Corps, even without the Demon Slayer mark, he wouldn't be weaker than the other Hashira who used it. With 9 Hashira like this, even if they couldn't defeat Muzan after ganging up on him, they should at least land a hit, right? At least, this was what all the Hashira thought, until Rizel kept them from even touching him, continuously knocking them down for 7 days straight. In their eyes, if Rizel's terrifying strength was below Muzan's, then Muzan wasn't a demon anymore but a god. Don't get ahead of yourselves. Rizel stepped forward and denied it. Sugikuni Yorichi from the Sengoku period was also a swordsman much stronger than Kibutsuji Muzan, but he still couldn't kill him, allowing him to escape. His point was that being able to win was one thing, but being able to kill was another. Even I, facing Kibutsuji Muzan, who can split his body into countless fragments to escape, wouldn't dare say I can absolutely stop him from getting away. It's best not to cling too tightly to your delusions. After hearing Rizel's words, all the Hashira became energized. Head instructor, how strong do you think he is? Shinobu asked a question that everyone was concerned about. They wanted to know if, at present, they had any chance against Muzan. However, reality was still cruel. Unfortunately, even if you awaken 3 abilities and can defeat an upper rank on your own, it's still unknown whether you can defeat him even when fighting together. Rizel honestly expressed his opinion. He had a rough estimate of Muzan's strength, but this estimate was mainly based on the original work. In the original work, as upper 1, Kokushibu's strength far exceeded that of ordinary upper ranks. He could single-handedly confront Gyume and Muichiro, both of whom had the Demon Slayer mark in the transparent world, along with Tsunemi, who used only the Demon Slayer mark. Yet, despite the combined efforts of the 3 Hashira, they only managed to defeat him after one of them was killed in the process. Kokushibo, conservatively estimated, should have a strength equivalent to level 5. Meanwhile, even while under the effects of Tamayo's drug, Muzan still could fight on his own against Tanjiro, Gyume, Tsunemi, Giyu, Obanai, and Mitsuri, a total of 6 people. Even though these 6 people either used the Demon Slayer mark, the bright red Nichiren sword, or the transparent world, Muzan could still single-handedly suppress them, forcing them to delay until daylight. Just this performance alone was enough to prove that Muzan was much stronger than Kokushibo. However, what made it worse was that this Muzan was not even at his prime. Firstly, because centuries ago Muzan was nearly killed by Yorichi, the wound left behind at that time hadn't fully healed even now, weakening his strength to a certain extent. Secondly, Tamayo injected Muzan with a complex drug containing 4 deadly effects. The first effect turned his demon body into a human body. The second accelerated his aging. The third prevented his body from splitting and escaping. The fourth disrupted his cells after the first 3 had taken effect. In the final battle, Muzan managed to neutralize the effect that turned him human, but the other 3 were still active. In a situation like this, his strength was certainly halved. Even so, Muzan could still single-handedly hold his own against the protagonist and 5 Hashira, showing that his strength in his prime would have been even more formidable. From this, it was clear that Muzan, despite his weakened state, could still outperform Kokushibo, who was at level 5. In other words, Muzan might not have been far from level 6 in his prime. Now that I think about it this way, Sugikuni Yorichi's strength seems terrifying. Rizal pondered inwardly. Muzan, possibly at level 6, almost slain by Yorichi. What level was Yorichi then? He could only say that Yorichi truly lived up to being the strongest character in the world of Demon Slayer. Not only was he born with the Demon Slayer mark, but he was also the creator of the breathing style and learned the principles of the transparent world from childhood, a true anomaly. If Yorichi were still alive, and if, like Rizal, could receive a god's blessing and fully unlock his potential, he would undoubtedly be a monstrous figure capable of pushing his limits and raising his basic abilities to SSS. However, I'm not weaker than Sugikuni Yorichi now, Rizal affirmed inwardly. In his current state, when adopting a strong attack mode, his strength was already equivalent to middle level 7, perhaps even surpassing Yorichi in his prime. If Yorichi could defeat Muzan in his prime in an instant, there was no reason Rizal couldn't do the same. Even if Muzan were really at level 6, Rizal could still easily defeat him even before learning sun breathing, let alone now. While this was true for Rizal, it was a different story for the Hashira. Even with the Demon Slayer mark, the transparent world, and the bright red Nichiren sword, which inflicted massive damage on demons, the strength of a single Hashira at best reached the limit of level 4. Even Gyume, who was the strongest in the Demon Slayer core, couldn't reach level 5 even after using the Demon Slayer mark and the transparent world. At most, he could only be considered to have stepped partially into it. If Muzan were in the weakened state seen in the later parts of the original work's main story, the 9 Hashira might have a chance of successfully defeating him. However, if Muzan were truly at level 6, could the 9 Hashira, who were not even at level 5, really succeed in taking him down? It was a big question mark. Understanding Rizal's point, every Hashira furrowed their brows. Is Kibutsuji Muzan really that strong? Tengen wondered aloud, to which Rizal responded with a simple affirmation. After living for 1,000 years, even a pig can turn into a demon, let alone a ruthless demon like him. Don't forget that demons grow stronger the more they consume humans. As the progenitor of demons, who else in this world has eaten as many humans as him? It could be said that under normal circumstances, no one in this world could surpass Muzan in combat power. Yorichi was simply an exception, a miracle. As all the Hashira looked at him solemnly, Rizal continued his words. I won't stop you if you want to join the fight. After all, you've got deep-seated grievances with demons that I don't share, so I've got no reason to stop you from taking them out. However, I don't support risking your lives by going after Kibutsuji Muzan, it's unnecessary. Your real opponents are the upper ranks, many of whom have a history with you. That's who you should be targeting. As for Kibutsuji Muzan, Rizal turned his body away, ready to leave. He's already mine. With these words, Rizal left the training ground, leaving the Hashira deep in thought, staring at his retreating figure. M. Mr. Sugikuni. Meanwhile, as Rizal was about to leave the training ground and return to his house, a voice called out to him. Upon hearing this familiar voice, Rizal halted his steps, turned around, and glanced behind him. Over there, someone was running toward him at a brisk pace. Tanjiro. Yes, it was none other than the protagonist, Kamado Tanjiro. Chapter 189, Hinokami Kagura. Long time no see, Mr. Sugikuni. As Tanjiro approached, he greeted Rizal with a hint of excitement. Oh, hey there, Rizal nodded. It has indeed been a while. Back when Rizal was first welcomed into the Rengoku residence by Kyujiro, he and Tanjiro used to meet quite frequently. However, since he began developing his new breathing style, attempting to evolve sun breathing, he hadn't seen Tanjiro much. Tanjiro would often drop by when Rizal was experimenting with sun breathing, but at that time, he was fully immersed in his experiment, neither noticing Tanjiro nor exchanging greetings with him. On top of that, after Rizal completed the evolution of sun breathing, Tanjiro went off on missions, away from the headquarters. From this, if counted, the two hadn't seen each other for at least a month or two, which could indeed be considered a long time. After a month or two, there hadn't been any significant changes in Tanjiro's body, but his breathing had become much more balanced and stable than before, proving that he hadn't neglected his practice during this time. His strength was still steadily increasing, steadily growing. So, you're in this village too? Rizal asked casually. Yes. Tanjiro nodded repeatedly. Mr. Rengoku asked me to come here to practice. He said a big battle might be coming, and if I didn't want to be left behind, I'd better improve my strength as much as I could. As he said this, Tanjiro cast an admiring gaze toward Rizal. I saw your training session just now. You're truly amazing, Mr. Sugikuni. Even though the Hashira are so strong, you single-handedly defeated them. Although Tanjiro knew Rizal was strong, especially after witnessing him defeat the upper three with a single slash, he hadn't expected Rizal to become so powerful in just a few months, let alone to become the head instructor of the Demon Slayer Corps. He had heard that the head instructor held the same status as the master, which meant it was above the Hashira. Was it too impolite of me to just rush up and say hi like that? Should I bow down first, lower my head even lower than my knees? Luckily, as Tanjiro was thinking this, Rizal intervened timely, interrupting his drifting thoughts. Honestly, you're not bad yourself. Rizal assessed Tanjiro with a glance. I can feel that you've gotten much stronger than before. Your strength should be close to a Hashira by now, right? Rizal wasn't just making idle talk. During the incident on the Mugen train, Tanjiro had already mastered total concentration, constant. Since total concentration, constant, was the minimum requirement to approach the strength of a Hashira, one could strive to reach the rank of Hashira by learning it. Additionally, Tanjiro had also become Kyujiro's Subuko after the incident, so while Rizal was evolving sun breathing, he received guidance from Kyujiro. Clearly, this made Tanjiro much stronger than he was during the incident. Although he hadn't reached the strength of a Hashira yet, he wasn't far off. Currently, Tanjiro was probably equivalent to the limit of level 3, just one step away from reaching level 4, where the strength of the Hashira lay. At this level of strength, disregarding the upper ranks for now, the lower ranks were definitely no longer Tanjiro's opponents. If Tanjiro could awaken the Demon Slayer mark as in the original work, he should immediately gain strength equivalent to a Hashira, right? Unfortunately, the side effect of the Demon Slayer mark was a problematic thing. Rizal didn't want to harm this innocent and kind-hearted boy, so he decided not to mention it. No, I still have a long way to go. Tanjiro shook his head repeatedly, not daring to accept Rizal's high praise. Rizal didn't mind either and casually asked again. What about your two buddies? They didn't come to this village with you. You mean Zenitsu and Inosuke? They did come, Tanjiro said honestly. It's just that Inosuke said he wanted to defeat the wild boars and bears in the area, so he headed into the mountains and disappeared. As for Zenitsu, after getting a letter yesterday and reading it, his face suddenly turned pale, and he vanished this morning. As that's so, Rizal paused for a moment, then quickly back to normal. What about your little sister? You didn't bring her along. As he asked this, Rizal gestured to Tanjiro's empty back. Tanjiro's back, where the wooden box that should have been with him at all times was now missing. Ah, that, ah ha ha, Tanjiro chuckled awkwardly. Nezuko can't be exposed to sunlight after all. I came here to practice, so I just left her in the dorm. Rizal nodded in understanding. Well, since you're here to practice, go find Rengoku, he's resting over there. With that, he turned and was about to leave, but Tanjiro suddenly called out. Wait, Mr. Sugikuni, can I ask you something? At his question, Rizal halted his steps, turned around, and looked at Tanjiro with a smile. Do you want to ask about sun breathing? Rizal spoke as if he had seen through Tanjiro's intention. Why, you already knew. Tanjiro was taken aback. I guess so. Rizal nodded with a faint smile. Ever since the incident of the Mugen train, I thought you might ask me about this, but I didn't expect you to endure until now. Ahahaha. It's because I never found the right opportunity. Tanjiro chuckled awkwardly while scratching his head. Then ask now, Rizal stated calmly, crossing his arms. I'll tell you what I know. Thank you, Tanjiro exclaimed joyfully, thanking him fervently. No worries, it's nothing. Rizal shook his head. In that case, I'll get straight to it. Tanjiro stared earnestly at Rizal and began to ask the question that had been on his mind for months. Excuse me, do you know about Hinokami Kagura? I do. Rizal nodded frankly. That's the dance passed down through generations in your family, right? Yes. Tanjiro took a deep breath and continued, my family lives on the mountain as charcoal sellers. It's been passed down for generations, and supposedly, we've been in this business for hundreds of years until my generation. I had a father, a mother, and many little brothers and younger sisters. At this point, Tanjiro's face showed a hint of nostalgia and a tinge of sorrow. 2 years ago, Kibutsuji Muzan attacked my family, killing them, and turning my little sister, Nezuko, into a demon. Tanjiro recounted the painful events, a story well known to Rizel, who was familiar with the original work. Originally, Tanjiro led a happy, ordinary life, much like most people, just an insignificant member of society. His father, bedridden for years, had passed away earlier, leaving behind a small family. Before Muzan's attack, the Kamado family had been relatively content, but after the attack, Tanjiro's peaceful and ordinary life came to a tragic end. Due to his job of selling charcoal down the mountain, Tanjiro narrowly escaped death, but his family perished, leaving only one survivor, his younger sister, Kamado Nezuko. Even though Nezuko survived, she fell victim to Muzan's transformation and became a demon that fed on humans. If not for the deep bond between Tanjiro and Nezuko, and his success in awakening her human nature and preventing her from succumbing to her demonic instincts, his younger sister might have become a target for demon slayers. My condolences. Rizel sighed, merely patting Tanjiro's shoulder since he was unsure of how to console someone. Thank you, but it's okay. I've learned to move forward, not dwell solely on past sorrows. Tanjiro wiped his wet eyes and shifted the conversation back to business. Although my family only sells charcoal, we perform Hinokami Kagura annually to honor the fire god. Hinokami Kagura is our ancestral dance dedicated to worshipping Lord Fire God. Tanjiro sought answers regarding his family's traditional dance. I just happened to use Hinokami Kagura during a fight with demons and found it to be a super powerful breathing style. Ever since, I've been wondering how it became a breathing style. Tanjiro said, sounding unsure. Observing his hesitation, Rizel spoke up. So, after witnessing my battle, you noticed your family's dance is identical to the sun breathing I used, correct? Upon hearing this, Tanjiro nodded in agreement. I've learned from Mr. Rengoku that sun breathing is the original breathing style, the first and strongest one. Tanjiro said, looking confused. But why would Hinokami Kagura be so similar to something so incredible? In fact, Tanjiro had previously asked Kyujiro the same question and received an astonishing answer, which Rizel now revealed. You must have figured it out by now, right? Hinokami Kagura is actually just sun breathing. Rizel smiled and locked eyes with Tanjiro. Actually, you already knew the answer, you just didn't want to believe it. Am I right? After becoming Kyujiro's Suguko, Tanjiro had already inquired about his family's Hinokami Kagura, even demonstrating it in front of Kyujiro, ultimately receiving confirmation from him. What you just used was the sun breathing that young Sugikuni used. Kyujiro affirmed it back then. Even so, Tanjiro still wasn't convinced. Why would Hinokami Kagura, a sacred dance passed down through generations in a family of mere charcoal sellers, be the strongest breathing style? Actually, the answer was quite simple. It's pretty simple, really, your family is the inheritor of sun breathing, simple as that. Rizel unveiled the secret. During the Sengoku period, sun breathing's creator, Sugikuni Yorichi, was close to your ancestor and demonstrated all the forms of sun breathing right in front of your ancestor's eyes. Even those Hanafuda earrings you wear. They were actually his, given to your ancestor by him. Clearly, this was why the Kamado family's Hinokami Kagura was sun breathing. Chapter 190, Treating Nezuko. Why the Kamado family became the inheritors of sun breathing was something that happened after Yorichi encountered Muzan and allowed him to escape. At that time, Yorichi was blamed and banished from the Demon Slayer Corps for letting Muzan escape, allowing Tamayo to go free, and for the murder of the then master of the Corps by his brother. Losing both refuge in the Demon Slayer Corps and the identity of a Demon Slayer, Yorichi, in a state of loneliness, encountered two ancestors of the Kamado family, a husband and wife pair who were being attacked by demons. As Yorichi saved them, he ultimately became friends with them. 2 years later, Yorichi visited them again and told his story to the husband, who had become his closest friend. At the husband's request, he later demonstrated sun breathing. As Yorichi demonstrated every sword form of sun breathing, they were deeply imprinted in the mind of the husband, without any loss or distortion. As a result, the Kamado family's Hinokami Kagura was born. Before parting, Yorichi also gifted his Hanafuda earrings to the husband. However, Yorichi never appeared again after that, never to be seen by the ancestors of the Kamado family. However, the sun-breathing personally demonstrated by Yorichi was passed down in the Kamado family along with the pair of Hanafuda earrings. Because of this, although the Kamado family had been an ordinary charcoal-selling family for generations, they were also the sole inheritors of sun-breathing in the world. Otherwise, why would Tanjiro's father understand the transparent world? It was because he was proficient in sun-breathing since childhood, which inadvertently led to his mastery and awakening of the transparent world. Unfortunately, Tanjiro's father had been very ill and bedridden all year round before passing away 3 years ago due to his illness. Given this, considering his talent for awakening the transparent world without a teacher, if he had joined the Demon Slayer Corps and formally practiced swordsmanship, he would have definitely become a stronger swordsman than Gyume, the strongest in the Corps. Oh, I see. After listening to Riesel's explanation, Tanjiro remained stunned for a long time, still unable to snap out of it. Truthfully, Tanjiro's reaction was understandable. For a plain charcoal-selling family to actually be the inheritors of the strongest breathing style and the ancestors of all breathing styles, the feeling was simply comparable to the shock of, oh, I'm actually born rich. Ding! Ling! At the perfect moment, a breeze blew, causing the Hanafuda earrings hanging from Tanjiro's ears to sway gently, emitting a tinkling sound like wind chimes. The pleasant sound not only made Riesel feel nostalgic but also awakened Tanjiro from his daze. I see now. This must be fate, right? Tanjiro muttered and clenched his fists, determination evident in his eyes. As the creator of sun breathing, Yorichi failed to kill Muzan, but because of this, he encountered Tanjiro's ancestors by chance and passed down sun breathing. Moreover, as inheritors of sun breathing, the Kamado family was coincidentally attacked and almost wiped out by Muzan, leaving only Tanjiro and his younger sister, who was turned into a demon. Since Tanjiro wanted to turn his younger sister back into a human, he had no choice but to search for Muzan to obtain a method to revert demons back to humans. With all these coincidences combined, Tanjiro truly feels the weight of fate. He must defeat Muzan, regardless of whether it was to fulfill Yorichi's regret as the inheritor of sun breathing or to seek revenge as the eldest son of the Kamado family and find a way to restore his younger sister back. Tanjiro felt he must defeat the Demon King. As Riesel looked at Tanjiro, whose eyes were filled with determination, he suddenly spoke. If you want to turn your little sister back into a human, maybe I can help. As if hit by lightning, Riesel's sudden statement left Tanjiro completely dumbfounded. What? Although Tanjiro couldn't believe his ears, Riesel had indeed said it clearly. I can help you turn your younger sister back into a human. Riesel's casually repeated words plunged Tanjiro into unprecedented excitement. Really? Is what you said true, Mr. Sugikuni? Tanjiro couldn't help but grab onto Riesel's clothes in desperation. Really? Riesel wasn't just saying things randomly. Humans become demons because Kibutsuji Muzan injected his blood into them, transforming their body constitution. Riesel explained. So theoretically, if we can obliterate his blood inside their body, it should be possible to turn them back into humans. Demons not only fed on humans but also increased their strength by consuming Muzan's blood. The more blood he gave them, the stronger they became. However, if the power within the blood were too strong, weaker demons might not be able to handle it and could end up self-destructing. Conversely, those who were able to handle it could become even stronger than upper one Kokushibo by relying solely on Muzan's blood. From this, it could be seen that Muzan's blood was the source of the demon's power. In other words, by decomposing his blood within their own, they should revert to being human. For Riesel, who possessed decomposition magic, this was entirely achievable. Mr. Sugikuni, Tanjiro stuttered, overcome with emotion, tears streaming down his face. All right, don't look at me like that, I just don't want to see your little sister get hurt because of me. Riesel shook his head and patted Tanjiro's shoulder. Later, I plan to kill Kibutsuji Muzan myself. Once he's gone, all the demons in the world will disappear with him. If your little sister dies because of this, I'll feel guilty. In fact, the original work didn't really mention what happened to the demons after Muzan died. Riesel wasn't sure if they would die along with him or if they would revert to being human. If it was the latter, it would be a good thing, but if it was the former, Tanjiro would have to face the loss of his closest family. With this in mind, Riesel decided to do a good deed and save Tanjiro's younger sister first before confronting Muzan. Thank you, Mr. Sugikuni. Thank you very much. Tanjiro repeatedly bowed to Riesel, tears streaming down his face, crying in a rather unsightly manner. All right, let's go, Riesel said with a smile. Take me to your little sister. Yes, Tanjiro replied loudly. In the Swordsmith village, Tanjiro lived in the collective dormitories provided for members of the Demon Slayer Corps. The dormitories varied in size. Some were large, some small, some accommodated only 2 to 3 people, while others could house around 10. Additionally, they were located on the outskirts of the village, clearly newly constructed. Meanwhile, Tanjiro resided in one of the smaller dormitories, which could accommodate only 3 or 4 people. Naturally, he shared it with Zenitsu, Inosuke, and his younger sister, Nezuko. Under Tanjiro's guidance, Riesel arrived in his dormitory and met his younger sister, Nezuko, who had always been kept inside a wooden box. Nezuko was a girl who seemed to be around the same age as Medist, about 14 years old. With waist-length jet black hair, she wore a pink kimono with a black haori over it and had a bamboo tube in her mouth. Riesel must admit, her appearance was cute, clearly a rare beauty in the making. At this moment, Nezuko was sleeping soundly on the futon laid out on the tatami mat. I'm back, Nezuko. Tanjiro knelt beside the futon, reaching out to gently stroke his younger sister's head with a gentle and serene expression that Riesel had never seen before. Is she asleep? Riesel asked as he observed Nezuko for a moment. Yes. Tanjiro unconsciously lowered his voice. Since becoming a demon, Nezuko has often slept like this, spending most of her time sleeping, seemingly maintaining her strength through sleep and suppressing her instinct as a demon, refraining from eating humans. It must be said that Tanjiro's younger sister was quite impressive. After turning into a demon, most people were usually controlled by uncontrollable violent tendencies, attacking humans on sight and gradually losing their humanity, even their memories of being human. Nezuko was the only demon who, through sheer willpower, overcame the instinct to eat humans and retained some of her humanity thanks to Tanjiro's calls. Even though she was the only demon in this world who had never eaten a human, her presence had caused conflicts within the Demon Slayer Corps. After all, Tanjiro being together with a demon, and even supporting the demon, was a major taboo within the Corps. Even someone as strong as Yorichi had been condemned by the Demon Slayer Corps for sparing Tamayo, let alone Tanjiro, a mere ordinary member. Because of this, the Corps had once considered executing his younger sister, and Tanjiro himself had also almost been executed. If it weren't for Giyu vouching for him and Shinobu later showing favoritism toward Tanjiro, along with Kagaya having some understanding of Nezuko's situation and allowing her existence, perhaps these siblings would no longer be part of the Demon Slayer Corps. Even so, most members of the Demon Slayer Corps still refused to acknowledge Nezuko. Some even refused to accept Tanjiro, despite Nezuko proving at the last Hashira meeting that she didn't eat humans. Luckily, there were now quite a few Hashira who acknowledged Tanjiro. Kyujiro becoming Tanjiro's mentor naturally implied recognition of Nezuko. Mitsuri never harbored biases against Tanjiro and always held him and his younger sister in high regard because she was kind-hearted. Muichiro seemed to consider Tanjiro and Nezuko's existence insignificant and chose to ignore them. Gyume seemed to be in a state of observation, with his thoughts unknown. As for Tengen, while he couldn't exactly be said to acknowledge Tanjiro and Nezuko, he hadn't insisted on rooting them out either. Only Sanemi and Obanai, the two with the worst tempers, worst personalities, and lowest popularity within the Demon Slayer Corps, still held a grudge against Tanjiro until now. Of course, as someone who knew the original work, Riesel naturally held an approving attitude toward Nezuko. He had come here to help her, which in itself was proof. Alright, I'm going to begin. Riesel knelt down on one knee and placed his hand on Nezuko's forehead. Please, I beg of you. Tanjiro bowed deeply to Rizel, his face filled with nervousness. Without bothering with Tanjiro further, Rizel began to use decomposition magic. BZZZT. Crimson waves soon appeared. Chapter 191, Quit. As crimson waves appeared in Rizel's hand, Tanjiro wasn't surprised. After all, swordsmen who had mastered the breathing style could conjure fire, water, wind, and more. Emitting crimson light was no big deal and certainly not surprising. Filled with anticipation, Tanjiro watched nervously as the crimson waves flowed from Rizel's hand to Nezuko's forehead, gradually covering her entire body. Rizel controlled the decomposition magic with precision, careful not to make a mistake that could decompose a person, which would be a disaster. He targeted only the foreign substance inside Nezuko, Muzen's demon blood that didn't belong in a human body. In the next moment, Nezuko suddenly began to convulse. A slightly pained sound escaped from Nezuko's mouth, muffled by the bamboo tube she was biting. Tanjiro almost couldn't resist rushing over, but he held himself back, choosing to trust Rizel. Nezuko's shaking intensified, and the sounds she made grew more pained. Pissed. Eventually, her entire body began to emit smoke. Nezuko. Tanjiro finally couldn't hold back and called out, but unfortunately, neither Rizel nor Nezuko had the energy to respond to him at this moment. Nezuko seemed to be enduring unbearable pain, causing her arms and legs to flail uncontrollably. Kai. Nezuko's sharp claws inadvertently scratched Rizel's hand, leaving a bloodstain on his arm. Rizel frowned slightly but didn't stop, calmly continued to release the decomposition magic. He had initially thought it would be simple, just decomposing Muzen's blood from Nezuko's body would restore her to human. Unfortunately, Muzen's blood had already merged with her flesh, completely transforming her body inside out. It wasn't something that could be decomposed so easily. Rizel needed to find and decompose the inhuman parts within Nezuko without harming other parts. Its difficulty was akin to plucking a thorn from an invisible cell, making one want to cry out that it was impossible. In the past, Rizel indeed wouldn't have been able to accomplish this. Luckily, the current him had awakened the transparent world, enabling him to see through bodies, observing the movement of every muscle and even each blood vessel. As long as he concentrated a bit more, it wasn't impossible to extract the so-called thorn, embedded in an invisible cell. In this manner, Rizel completely shut down all his senses, leaving only the minimum necessary, and focused intensely on observing every cell and every bit of flesh in Nezuko's body. Before long, he extracted all the foreign substances he discovered inside, decomposing them with decomposition magic. Clearly, this process was cumbersome, lengthy, and tested one's patience. At least half an hour had passed, and Rizel was still at it. Nezuko continued to struggle in apparent pain, emphasizing the difficulty of the task. After half an hour, the smoke emanating from Nezuko began to lessen, and her pain sounds and struggles gradually eased as well. About an hour later, as the crimson waves disappeared, Nezuko finally calmed down completely. Phew, only then did Rizel let out a breath and stand up. How is she, Mr. Sugikuni? Tanjiro, who hadn't blinked once during the entire process, kept his eyes glued to Rizel. Seeing that Rizel seemed to be done, he quickly asked. However, Rizel didn't respond and merely gave Tanjiro a slight smile before turning to leave. Mr. Su. Tanjiro instinctively tried to call out, but in the next second, he was interrupted by another voice. Big brother. When that faint, drowsy voice echoed in the room and reached Tanjiro's ears, he felt as if struck by lightning, freezing in place. After a moment of daze, tears welled up in Tanjiro's eyes once again. Leaving Tanjiro's dormitory, Rizel immediately heard the sound of crying from inside as he stepped outside. Poor guy, Rizel sighed, deciding not to rush off, and instead waited outside. In the end, he ended up waiting for another half hour. Finally, Tanjiro came out of the dormitory, wiping away his tears. Thank you, Mr. Sugikuni, thank you so much. As soon as Tanjiro saw Rizel, he ran up to him without hesitation, bowing repeatedly. All right, you thanked me plenty of times already. Rizel helped Tanjiro up, not letting him bow any further. No matter how many times I thank you, it won't be enough to express how I feel right now. Tanjiro said with a tearful but relieved smile. Nezuko is my only family left. I've always been worried, thinking about what I'd do if she never turned back into a human. A demon becoming human was unprecedented. Not only had Tanjiro never heard of it, but even in the past records of the Ubuyashiki family, the Rengoku family, and the entire Demon Slayer Corps, there were no records of demons turning back into humans. Not even in the original work was there any mention of demons becoming humans until Tamayo developed the cure for it. Although Tanjiro had strong willpower and unwavering determination, he had always been uncertain about whether he could truly turn his younger sister back into a human, until today. The one who made it possible was the very strong, very mysterious, and very powerful head instructor he had only recently met. At this moment, Tanjiro made up his mind. From now on, you're my big brother. No, that's not necessary. Rizel raised his eyebrows. No way, you're my big brother now. But I think. Big brother. Tanjiro's loud voice and determination left Rizel speechless, literally unable to refuse. It had to be said, as Kyujiro's Suguko, Tanjiro might not have mastered everything yet, but his loud voice and stubbornness had certainly surpassed his mentors. Fine, do whatever you want. Rizel didn't care anymore. Back on the Mugen train, this boy had also called him Big Brother for a while. Even though it wasn't the same kind of Big Brother, it didn't really matter. As such, he would just accept it. Is your little sister okay? Rizel asked, changing the topic. Yeah, she's fine. A gentle expression appeared on Tanjiro's face as he answered. She still seems very tired, so I let her sleep. Tonight, I'll ask Miss Shinobu to come and check on Nezuko. I just hope she stays healthy. All right, Rizel nodded. So you're not practicing today? I'll be with Nezuko for now. Tanjiro said apologetically. I'm worried about her and want to stay by her side for a bit, but once she's better, I'll definitely come back. Actually, you could just quit, you know. Rizel suddenly suggested. Your little sister's back to being human, so you don't need to look for Kibutsuji Muzan anymore. You could take her home and stay away from the battlefield. It wouldn't be a bad choice for both of you. Upon hearing this, Tanjiro instantly fell silent. You're only left with Nezuko, right? Rizel said, and it's the same for her. If you keep fighting and end up running into a powerful demon and getting killed, Nezuko won't have any family left to rely on. You don't have to answer now. Tanjiro opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but Rizel interrupted him. Think it over carefully. Also, it's a good idea to talk it over with your little sister so you don't have to rush your decision. Upon hearing this, Tanjiro closed his mouth, showing a complex expression. Seeing Tanjiro's expression, Rizel immediately turned and left. Seeing him leave, Tanjiro didn't say anything, only bowing deeply to Rizel's back. He knew Rizel was saying those things for his own good. Still, he really couldn't make a decision yet. With this in mind, Tanjiro thought he should really take the time to consider what to do next. In fact, Rizel's saying those suggestions to Tanjiro for a reason. As the protagonist, Tanjiro's body had many outstanding qualities. If developed properly, he would undoubtedly become an outstanding character, capable of playing a decisive role in critical moments. However, in the original work's ending, Tanjiro's fate wasn't particularly a good one. One of his arms had atrophied, one eye had gone blind, and due to using the Demon Slayer mark, he wouldn't live past 25. Nevertheless, for Tanjiro, this was already a happy ending. His younger sister had returned to being human, Muzan had been defeated, and he had returned home with his friends to live an ordinary life. Even though Tanjiro was content with this outcome, it actually still left many regrets. Fortunately, none of this had happened yet. Since the final battle hadn't started, Tanjiro's Demon Slayer mark hadn't awakened, and with himself around, Muzan wouldn't go unopposed. Given this, Tanjiro didn't need to jump into this mess. If Tanjiro were to die in battle this time, his younger sister would indeed be left all alone. Knowing this, it would be better not to let him join the fight in the first place. However, well, he's the protagonist after all. If protagonists give up so easily, villains in countless worlds would probably cheer for 3 days and nights. Riesel somewhat anticipated what would happen next. "Oh, you're back. You're so slow. I've been waiting for you forever. Hurry up, let's continue. Let's go." Unconsciously, instead of returning to his house, Riesel went back to the training ground, urged on by the fully re-energized Hashira. Seeing them, Riesel smiled slightly, drew his sword, and entered the training ground. Before long, the flames and explosions returned, and the hellish special training resumed. Chapter 192, Mechanical Doll. The next day, Riesel continued giving special training to the 9 Hashira in the training ground, helping them awaken the transparent world. Meanwhile, other members of the Demon Slayer Corps stood by, watching as Riesel tortured and beat all the Hashira. Whenever they found something amusing, they cheered loudly, earning deathly glares from Tsunemi and Obanai. One moment they were filled with joy, the next they were miserable. Each of them was eventually caught by the Hashira and taken away for rigorous training. Kaguya had instructed the Hashira to oversee the training of the lower-ranking members during their free time, pushing them to improve their skills whenever possible. Originally, this task should have fallen to Riesel as the head instructor, but Kaguya seemed to notice Riesel's lack of interest in training ordinary members, thus assigning the task to the Hashira instead. Indeed, Riesel had little interest in training these ordinary members. After all, he wasn't here to babysit the Demon Slayer Corps. If the Hashira needed special training, so be it, but why should he bother with the ordinary members? Although it seemed like Riesel was simply pushing the Hashira around during their training sessions, there were benefits he gained. At the very least, it allowed him to hone his swordsmanship and let his swordsman development ability absorb some excellia. As for the ordinary members, with their combat power hovering around level 3 at best, how much training effect could they possibly provide for him? It would be better for them to train on their own. For this reason, if Kaguya had tasked Riesel with this job, he would have surely declined. Even so, since Kaguya hoped to enhance the overall strength of the Demon Slayer Corps, Riesel had no reason to object. After some contemplation, Riesel made his decision known to the Hashira. "Every morning, I'll train you all, and in the afternoons, you'll train the other members." However, his decision met with both approval and opposition. Kyujiro, Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Gyume were in favor. They were Hashira who valued helping others, so naturally, they supported anything that could benefit others. On the other hand, Tsunemi, Obanai, Tengen, and Muichiro were opposed. They were displeased at the prospect of their training time being halved and saw little value in improving the meager skills of ordinary members. In their eyes, only the Hashira were crucial combat power, making the other members' roles seem insignificant. In the end, this stark difference in views led to a heated argument. Only Giyu remained silent and indifferent as usual, choosing not to engage in the discussion. Ironically, this attitude explained why he had always been isolated and alone. In the end, the argument continued until Riesel put an end to it with a single statement. "You know, in my eyes, your skills are also insignificant and unnecessary. Why don't you all stop training and go home?" His words instantly silenced the Hashira on Tsunemi's side. With that, the issue was finally settled. Following Riesel's decision, the Hashira arranged a training schedule for the entire Demon Slayer Corps. In the morning, Riesel sparred with the 9 Hashira, while ordinary members engaged in basic physical training. In the afternoon, Riesel rested while the 9 Hashira conducted training sessions with various members, including sparring among other activities. In the evening, everyone reserved it for rest. It was decided that this new training schedule would begin from today. At this moment, Riesel had nearly finished sparring with the 9 Hashira, and it was time for them to train the other members. Riesel left them behind and walked out of the training ground, as he had done the day before. However, just like yesterday, he was stopped shortly after leaving. "Big brother." Clearly, that voice and the way of addressing could belong to only one person. Sure enough, Tanjiro, looking like he had just completed his training, ran toward Riesel, panting heavily. However, he wasn't alone, but had someone with him. It wasn't his younger sister, who had just recovered yesterday, nor was it his usual 2 best friends. Instead, it was a local boy from the village, wearing a Hayatoko mask. Rizel glanced at the boy and felt a sense of familiarity. Before long, it clicked in his mind who this boy was. Is it him? As Rizel recalled who the boy was, a flash of insight struck him, reminding him of something from the swordsmith village. Instantly, his face lit up with curiosity. At this moment, Tanjiro and the boy had already arrived in front of Rizel. Big brother. Tanjiro seemed to have taken a liking to this nickname, calling out happily while smiling. Looks like you've already made up your mind, huh? Rizel turned his gaze toward Tanjiro. Yes. Tanjiro nodded, seeming to have made up his mind. Nezuko and I have discussed it. We promised to go back together, but not now. It'll be after everything is over, with Zenitsu and Inosuke. Are you really sure about this? Rizel asked, not trying to persuade him further, just confirming. If you die, this promise will turn into a lifetime of pain and regret. It's precisely because of this promise that I need to continue training, to become stronger, and to have the necessary strength to survive. Tanjiro spoke earnestly as he gazed into Rizel's eyes. Nezuko and I have come this far thanks to many people who helped us, pushing us forward. Zenitsu, Inosuke, and of course Teacher Rengoku, Miss Shinobu, and Mr. Tomioka, everyone who's got high hopes for me. Plus, the Master's kindness, the will of our ancestors, and the memories of our departed family. It's because of all of them that I've come this far. If it weren't for everyone's support, I would have definitely collapsed halfway. Tanjiro's voice grew stronger. Now, everyone's heading into battle to end it all, to stop the tragedy, willing to risk everything. In that case, how could I abandon everyone and run away with just my younger sister? In the future I dream of, I want not just Nezuko to be part of my family, but everyone. After declaring this, Tanjiro gave Rizel a big smile. That's why, I will fight together with everyone till the end. Clearly, this was the conclusion Tanjiro and Nezuko reached after talking through the night. In any event, the Kamado siblings were naturally people who knew how to be grateful. Even though the bond between them had indeed sustained and brought them this far, their connections weren't limited to each other but extended to others as well. Not to mention, they not only harbored deep hatred toward Muzan but also bore a fate inherited from Yorichi that had been passed down through generations of their family. In short, they had no reason to evade this battle. Sorry to disappoint you after all you had done for us. Tanjiro bowed deeply to Rizel. No, it's okay. Rizel smiled faintly. I actually had a feeling about your decision earlier. I just hope you can make it to the end and achieve the future you're looking forward to, without any regrets. Yes, Tanjiro responded loudly. Seeing the conversation between Rizel and Tanjiro coming to an end, the boy beside Tanjiro finally jumped in. Are you done talking? Then it's my turn, the boy declared. Ah, right, let me introduce him. Tanjiro seemed to just remember the boy's presence and quickly introduced him. He is Kotetsu, from the swordsmith village. I can tell. Rizel glanced at the mask on the boy's face. So what's the story? How did you end up together? We didn't end up together, we just met recently. Tanjiro said, scratching his head. He was hiding and peeking from the side. Well, he looked kinda pitiful, so I brought him along. I wasn't peeking. Kotetsu immediately protested. I just happened to pass by. Yeah, just happened to pass by. Really? Tanjiro tilted his head. But weren't you here yesterday too? What? Kotetsu was surprised. How did you know? Because of the smell. Tanjiro straightened up proudly. My nose is quite sensitive, you know. I don't understand what you're talking about. Kotetsu protested. Nevertheless, he no longer denied coming here and began stealing glances at Rizel with a hesitant expression. What's up? Rizel asked in confusion. Do you have something to ask me? Well, sort of. Kotetsu's voice involuntarily lowered. I heard you're the master of the divine sword, so I wanted to ask you something. Rizel nodded, gesturing for him to continue. After much hesitation, Kotetsu finally mustered the courage to ask his question. Can you fix a mechanical doll? Kotetsu asked with a somewhat hopeful voice. Mechanical doll. Tanjiro blinked his eyes, confused. As for Rizel, he had a sudden realization upon hearing the boy's question. Now, he knew why Kotetsu had come to him. Are you referring to Yorichi Type 0? Rizel's words surprised Kotetsu. Why you know about Yorichi Type 0? Kotetsu seemed somewhat surprised. Yorichi Type 0. Tanjiro's face displayed a question mark and his eyes widened. What's that? Seeing his confusion, Kotetsu began to explain. It's a mechanical doll created by my ancestor for combat training. It can perform 108 different movements and possesses superhuman strength. Many members of the Demon Slayer Corps who have visited the village always used it for training, but it's quite old now, almost falling apart. Recently, fewer people come specifically to train with it, and fewer people even know of its existence. Ah, I see. Tanjiro nodded earnestly. Seeing his reaction, Rizel doubted whether he truly understood. However, that wasn't the priority right now. Are you asking me to help you repair Yorichi Type 0? Rizel voiced Kotetsu's true purpose. Yes. Upon hearing Rizel's question, Kotetsu nodded heavily. Chapter 193, Yorichi Type 0. Yorichi Type 0, the existence of this battle-oriented mechanical doll, only came back to Rizel's memory after meeting Kotetsu. Its presence wasn't imposing, but from its name alone, one could discern a connection to Sugikuni Yorichi. In truth, the creator of this mechanical doll created it after Yorichi, endowing it with strength far surpassing that of ordinary humans. Moreover, it had existed for a considerable time, spanning from the Sengoku period to the present day, easily over 300 years. Clearly, the fact that a mechanical doll could persist for over 3 centuries was truly remarkable in itself, emphasizing its exceptional nature. It was thanks to Kotetsu's family, who had taken care of this mechanical doll since the Sengoku period, for over 300 years up to the present day. As Rizel thought about this mechanical doll, his interest was piqued, but he also felt a bit confused about Kotetsu's intentions. Why did you come to me? Rizel asked with a puzzled tone. In fact, Yorichi Type 0 was quite old, nearly breaking down and beyond repair. Unfortunately, by the time it reached Kotetsu's generation, the necessary skills and knowledge needed to maintain and repair it had been lost, so it wasn't unusual for him to seek someone to help him fix it. However, the question remained, why didn't Kotetsu approach the highly skilled swordsmiths in the swordsmith village, but instead came to him? Truly, this was something Rizel couldn't quite grasp. However, Kotetsu's next words would answer his doubt. In the village, apart from my father, there's no one left who can repair Yorichi Type 0, including myself. As Kotetsu answered, there was a hint of reluctance in his tone. A mechanical doll that had survived from the Sengoku period to the present surely harbored remarkable craftsmanship. While the swordsmith village boasted many skilled swordsmiths, particularly the village chief who was arguably the world's best swordsmith, expertise in mechanical doll making was scarce. After all, this type of craftsmanship was already niche within the swordsmith village, almost forgotten and overlooked. Because of this, until now, only Kotetsu's father possessed the ability to maintain, care for, and repair Yorichi Type 0. Sadly, Kotetsu's father had passed away, leaving Kotetsu as the last inheritor of this dwindling mechanical doll. However, Kotetsu was merely a precocious child, lacking the ability to repair Yorichi Type 0, and didn't even possess the natural talent for swordsmithing. For this reason, in the original work, Yorichi Type 0 remained damaged until the end. Fortunately, at this time and this moment, Kotetsu saw hope in repairing Yorichi Type 0, which lay in Rizel. You're the master of the divine sword, right? Kotetsu asked with a hint of anticipation. Many in the village say the divine sword was actually made by you. Although some skilled swordsmiths led by the village chief deny this claim, stating they don't smell the scent of a blacksmith on you, I want to know, if you really did create the divine sword, can you also repair mechanical dolls? Upon hearing this, Rizel finally understood. Needless to say, Kotetsu harbored a hopeful belief when he sought him out. You sure know how to beat a dead horse. Rizel chuckled and shook his head. So, can you? Kotetsu asked, not denying Rizel's words while looking nervously at him. After a moment of contemplation, Rizel replied, take me to see Yorichi Type 0 first, then we'll decide. All right, Kotetsu readily agreed. Can I come along? Tanjiro quickly raised his hand. Let's go. Rizel glanced at him with a smile. Perhaps you will find something useful there. After saying these mysterious words, he took the lead and walked ahead. Seeing this, Tanjiro and Kotetsu hurried to catch up. Under Kotetsu's guidance, Rizel and Tanjiro arrived at another stretch of mountain forest. A clearing lay before them, seemingly designated for training purposes, though it appeared neglected from lack of recent use. It's right there. Kotetsu stepped into the clearing, pointing toward a figure standing tall in the center. Rizel looked up and immediately spotted the mechanical doll, a relic from the Sengoku period, still intact. It was dressed in a kimono, resembling an ancient samurai, with its hair styled in a tall ponytail. It had the appearance of a human male, but its expression was stiff and robotic, revealing that beneath its exterior lay not supple flesh, but rigid mechanical parts. It also had 6 arms, each equipped with a sword, resembling a demon from hell. Even standing motionless, it emanated a faint but eerie sense of dread. Is this Yorichi Type 0? Rizel examined Yorichi Type 0 with interest. Tanjiro also did the same. This doll. As Tanjiro stared at the mechanical doll's face, he felt a strange sense of familiarity. Kotetsu stepped in to explain. This is Yorichi Type 0, a combat mechanical doll of my family. It was my ancestor's greatest creation during his lifetime, unmatched even today. According to my family records, Yorichi Type 0 was modeled after an extremely powerful swordsman from the Sengoku period. The swordsman's incredible skill left a profound impact on my ancestor, inspiring him to create this mechanical doll. Kotetsu's voice brimmed with pride. To replicate the swordsman's skills, my ancestor created Yorichi Type 0 with multiple action modes, 6 arms, and 6 swords. Without these modifications, it's said that the doll wouldn't even possess a tenth of the swordsman's strength. Hence, Yorichi Type 0 appears as a 6-armed swordsman. Kotetsu's words finally dawned on Tanjiro, usually dense and slow to react. Yorichi Type 0, Yorichi. Muttering this, Tanjiro looked at Rizel in surprise. Just as you suspected. Rizel nodded. This mechanical doll is designed after Sugikuni Yorichi from the Sengoku period, the creator of sun breathing, who passed it down to you and me. Upon hearing this, Tanjiro finally understood why the mechanical doll seemed so familiar to him. After all, this was the great ancestor who had once befriended and saved his own ancestors, leaving behind the legacy of sun breathing for his family. Furthermore, the blood flowing within him told him that the person with that appearance was a great benefactor to his family. One could even say Yorichi was his family's master, sensei, and the master of his family through generations since the Sengoku period. Tanjiro fell silent for a while, then bowed respectfully toward Yorichi Type 0. Rizel, however, didn't share Tanjiro's deep emotions. His connection with Yorichi was not as profound as Yorichi's connection with Tanjiro's family, so he simply continued to examine Yorichi Type 0, vaguely recognizing the figure of the swordsman who had demonstrated sun breathing to him in his dream. Eventually, Rizel turned to Kotetsu and threw out a question. It should still be functional, right? It should be. Kotetsu nodded hesitantly, but Yorichi Type 0 is quite old now. It can move, but if it's put into combat again, it might break down immediately. If that's the case, there's nothing we can do. Rizel glanced back at the mechanical doll. We need to see how much it can move before deciding whether we can repair it. If it breaks before then, it's just its fate. Although his statement saddened Kotetsu, it was also the truth. Okay, I'll make it move. Kotetsu took a key from his pocket, approached Yorichi Type 0, and inserted it into a hole in its body. He then twisted the key, activating it. Ka. Asterisk. In the next moment, the sound of metal parts being activated echoed from within Yorichi Type 0. As its eyes lit up slightly as if infused with life, it raised its head. Seeing this, Kotetsu hurried back. At the same time, Rizel suddenly grabbed Tanjiro by the arm. Tanjiro was taken aback. Big brother. His voice conveyed both confusion and a hint of unease as if sensing something ominous. You go and give it a try. Sure enough, as Rizel heartlessly said this, he threw Tanjiro toward Yorichi Type 0 without hesitation. Tanjiro immediately let out a series of screams as he was thrown right in front of Yorichi Type 0. Swish. Asterisk. Seeing its target, Yorichi Type 0 instantly sprang into action. It extended its 6 arms and raised its 6 swords before dashing toward Tanjiro with astonishing speed. Wait. Tanjiro exclaimed in shock, quickly drawing his own sword. Ding! Asterisk. In the next moment, their swords clashed, producing a crisp sound of impact and sparks flying. In the nick of time, Tanjiro hastily raised his sword, blocking the lightning-fast strike coming toward him. However, Yorichi Type Zero's other 5 arms and swords also moved, like a storm, slashing out with a flurry of sword lights, attacking Tanjiro like a torrential downpour. Clang, cling, clang, cling, asterisk, clang, cling, clang, cling, asterisk. For a moment, the sounds of swords colliding echoed fiercely in the empty clearing. Yorichi Type Zero seemed possessed by a god of war, its 6 swords turning into blades of minced meat, slashing out flashes of sword light, cutting out slashes with incredible speed and high attack frequency, forcing Tanjiro to barely defend himself. Seeing this scene, Riesel's eyes grew brighter and brighter. Hey, even though it's almost falling apart, it still has this kind of strength. Looking intently at Yorichi Type Zero, Riesel made his judgment. Yorichi Type Zero should have combat power equivalent to level 4. Clearly, this was essentially the combat power of a Hashira, yet it appeared in the form of a mere doll. Interesting. Riesel was interested in this mechanical doll, or rather, he was interested in acquiring the technology to create it. Chapter 194, Frightening Prospect. Ever since Riesel first met Kotetsu and recalled Yorichi Type Zero, he had been interested in it. Yorichi Type Zero, as a combat mechanical doll far surpassing ordinary human capabilities, though ultimately unable to match Yorichi's prowess, still possessed considerable prowess in this world, not to be underestimated. In the original work, Muichiro, a Hashira, used Yorichi Type Zero for training. Despite its significant wear and damage, it could still hold its own against him, proving its capabilities were not inferior to a Hashira. Surprisingly, such a mechanical doll was actually created solely by a swordsmith without any extraordinary or supernatural powers. What did this mean? It meant that with the mechanical doll's blueprint and sufficient technical skills, such a mechanical doll could potentially be mass-produced, truly a frightening prospect. A mechanical doll equivalent to level 4, if hundreds or even thousands of them were assembled into an army, might eliminate the need for the Demon Slayer Corps, as demons would have no chance of dominating the world anymore. Even Muzan would likely retreat if faced with an army composed of Hashira-level mechanical dolls, unwilling to engage with such opponents. A combat power at level 4 was considered elite even within Loki Familia, let alone among the knightly orders of the Frenzel family, where out of 800 members, no more than 100 would reach this level. Moreover, if the conditions were met, these mechanical dolls could be mass-produced in the tens of thousands, even millions. It was inevitable that Riesel would be interested in this prospect. Of course, while he entertained the thought, if it were so easy, there would not be just one Yorichi Type Zero in this world after hundreds of years have passed since the Sengoku period. Yorichi Type Zero was the masterpiece of Kotetsu's ancestor, unique in its kind. Even if this ancestor were reborn, it was uncertain whether he could recreate such a powerful mechanical doll again, let alone anyone else. Kotetsu's family, inheriting the technology from their ancestor, had only been able to maintain and repair Yorichi Type Zero. No one had ever succeeded in creating another mechanical doll of this caliber, illustrating how advanced the technology used in its creation was, and how difficult it was to master and replicate such a technology. In such a situation, even if one had the blueprint and the necessary technical skills in hand, creating such a mechanical doll would be extremely difficult. However, Riesel didn't need to fully comprehend the technical aspects since, after all, he was a magician. If he could forge swords using structure system magic, couldn't he also create a mechanical doll using it? After all, this mechanical doll didn't rely on magic metal, didn't employ any extraordinary means, and wasn't an alchemy item, magic item, or special equipment. It was merely a doll with a sophisticated design concept and mechanical technology. Riesel could perfectly imprint the design into his mind, memorizing every part and material, construction, and placement of the mechanical doll, and then replicate it using magic, mimicking it exactly. Since it was akin to copy-pasting, he didn't need to read the text or understand its meaning, one click and it was copied down. Even if he couldn't understand what was written in it, the content was completely consistent with the original version. When others saw it, the information they received and accepted would be the same, and the effect it had on both sides was no different. In this way, Riesel could mass-produce mechanical dolls equivalent to Level 4, effectively carrying a Level 4 army wherever he went. Riesel couldn't help but feel chills down his spine as he thought about the idea. And so, after done pondering, Riesel turned to Kotetsu. "Your family must have a blueprint for Yorichi Type 0, right? Something like its design drawing or concept." Blueprint. As Kotetsu nervously glanced at the fierce battle between Tanjiro and Yorichi Type 0 in the clearing, he paused slightly upon hearing Riesel's question, then furrowed his brow uncertainly. "Something like that should exist. My father used to occasionally look at a book while repairing Yorichi Type 0. I think that book might contain this blueprint thingy." Kotetsu had flipped through that book many times himself, but whether it actually contained the so-called blueprint, he didn't know since he couldn't make sense of it. Still, his father had mentioned that the book contained records related to the mechanical doll left by their ancestor. After his father's death, he often reread the book, intending to learn everything about the mechanical doll it detailed, but he still couldn't understand it. It was also because of this that he confirmed he lacked the talent for swordsmithing, let alone for mechanical dolls, leaving him in despair. "Can I take a look at that book?" Riesel asked without knowing Kotetsu's thoughts. "All right." Kotetsu hesitated for a while, then sighed resignedly. "It's useless to me anyway. Keeping it would only lead to the end of our legacy." After saying this, Kotetsu reluctantly glanced at Yorichi Type 0 battling fiercely with Tanjiro, then turned and walked away. Riesel didn't follow, continuing to watch the battle. Water breathing. 8th form, waterfall basin. At this moment, Tanjiro shouted loudly, descending from above and slashing downward with his black Nichiren sword, causing a surging water pillar to appear around him, a magnificent display. However, Yorichi Type 0 firmly blocked this formidable slash with its 2 arms holding 2 swords, deflecting it, while its other 4 arms wielded 4 swords to viciously slash, cutting through and dispersing the water pillar. As a result, Tanjiro was sent flying, rolling several times on the ground before crashing into a tree and barely stopping his tumbling. "Strong. Very strong." Tanjiro gasped heavily, his body covered in dirt and disheveled. Clearly, faced with Yorichi Type 0, which could rival a Hashira but lacked any emotion as a mechanical doll, it didn't show any mercy. Gripping its 6 swords, Yorichi Type 0 charged at Tanjiro again, forcing him to defend himself desperately. For a while, the scene was filled with rolling water tides, while the constant clash of swords echoed in the air. Riesel frowned slightly as he watched Tanjiro's desperate and battered appearance. It seems like water breathing isn't quite suited for him. Seeing Tanjiro's movement, Riesel noted the problem. He could tell that when Tanjiro used water breathing, not only did he fail to exhibit the breathing style's characteristic flexibility and fluidity, but he also appeared stiff with every move. Water breathing was supposed to be the most stable and durable breathing style for prolonged combat among all breathing styles. Yet, despite Tanjiro having used water breathing for such a short time, he already seemed out of breath. Evidently, this wasn't just due to exhaustion from fending off his opponent's fierce attacks, but also because his breathing couldn't keep up with the gentle rhythm required by water breathing. From this, it was clear that Tanjiro was never a swordsman skilled in the gentle and adaptable ways of water breathing but a swordsman burning with ambition, hard work, and determination, a temperament truly unsuitable for practicing water breathing. Tanjiro's Nichiren sword also attested to this fact. Its blade, black like Riesel's hermit, told others that water breathing wasn't the most suitable breathing style for him. If he used sun breathing, Hinokami Kagura, passed down through his family for generations, wouldn't that change the course of the battle? Riesel speculated as he watched Tanjiro's Nichiren sword. Currently, Tanjiro possessed combat power close to the limit of level 3. If he switched to sun breathing, he should be able to match Yorichi Type 0 in a short time. Unfortunately, Tanjiro couldn't. Yeah, his body is too weak. Why didn't sun breathing continue within the Demon Slayer core, instead spawning fundamental breathing styles like flame, water, wind, stone, and thunder? Of course, the reason lay in sun breathing's demanding requirements for the practitioner's body. Even the swordsmen of the first-generation breathing styles couldn't meet these rigorous demands. Tanjiro, with his frail body, was far from capable of wielding the full power of sun breathing. Riesel even suspected that the early death and chronic illness of Tanjiro's father might have been due to forcibly using sun breathing without the necessary body constitution, leading to his illness. Riesel himself didn't face such troubles. As a first-class adventurer, his body constitution might even surpass that of Yorichi, leaving no doubt about his capability to use sun breathing. However, Tanjiro was different. He was a completely ordinary young man with a weak body constitution. If he were to use sun breathing, he would likely collapse in intense pain within moments, unable to move. Seeing Tanjiro on the brink of collapse, Riesel prepared to intervene immediately, but just as he was considering his next move, Tanjiro's breathing suddenly changed rhythm. Total concentration. Flame breathing. In an instant, the water flowing on Tanjiro's sword abruptly transformed into raging flames. Fifth form, Flame Tiger. Tanjiro yelled, slashing at Yorichi Type 0 with a gigantic slash resembling a burning fierce tiger. Boom! Asterisk. Amidst the thunderous roar, the Flame Tiger roared and collided with Yorichi Type 0, causing explosions and shockwaves that sent dust and debris flying everywhere. Unexpectedly, Yorichi Type 0 was pushed back by this fierce blow, smoke billowing from its entire body as it crashed into a tree. Flame breathing. Riesel's foot halted mid-step. He looked in surprise at Tanjiro, who was readjusting his breathing to calm the rapid inhales. So, Rengoku taught flame breathing to Tanjiro, huh? Riesel was somewhat taken aback. Although not sun breathing, flame breathing was clearly the closest breathing style to it. Such a breathing style undoubtedly suited Tanjiro better than water breathing, especially with his burning ambition yet inability to freely use sun breathing. As a result, Tanjiro's movements changed, becoming more aggressive and explosive. Flames roared, fire waves swept, and with his sword ablaze, Tanjiro relentlessly attacked Yorichi Type 0, momentarily locking in a stalemate. After observing for a while, Riesel heard Kotetsu's voice. "I'm back." Kotetsu hurried back, clutching an old book in his arms. "Here, this is a book that's been passed down through my family for generations." Kotetsu handed the old book to Riesel. "Thank you." Riesel thanked Kotetsu and immediately started flipping through the pages. Instantly, complex, obscure texts and intricate drawings filled his vision. Chapter 195, A Brand New Mechanical Doll. Night soon fell. By this time, Riesel had returned to his house and was sitting on the veranda, flipping through the old book containing records about Yorichi Type 0. Surprisingly, the contents of this old book were extensive, thick with text and illustrations. Even Riesel couldn't finish reading all of it at once. Hence, he brought the book back with him and promised Kotetsu that once he finished reading it, he would help repair Yorichi Type 0. Truthfully, the task wasn't difficult. Once Riesel noted down the blueprint of Yorichi Type 0, he could directly use structure system magic to manufacture a new Yorichi Type 0. Providing an old model with new components was a piece of cake then. After confirming the internal mechanisms and positions of all the parts within Yorichi Type 0, Riesel could easily replace all the internal parts with new ones using his magic. A simple repair of its exterior would then revive this combat mechanical doll, restoring it to its former glory. By the way, it seemed that Tanjiro still wanted to confront Yorichi Type 0. When Riesel planned to return home, he appeared to still be battling it. Although Tanjiro briefly regained ground using flame breathing, he was still far from reaching the strength of a Hashira even with sun breathing, let alone the weaker flame breathing. As a result, Tanjiro lost to Yorichi Type 0 again and again, even having a chunk of his hair sliced off by it. Apparently, this infuriated him, causing his stubborn nature to flare up, and he vowed not to rest until he defeated it. Of course, Kotetsu vehemently opposed this. "Yorichi Type 0 is almost broken, and you still want to fight it? No way." After saying that, Kotetsu hurriedly took Yorichi Type 0 back home. However, Tanjiro's stubbornness refused to yield. "Let me fight it one more time. Just once more. After this, I won't fight it anymore. I promise." In the end, as Tanjiro strongly insisted, he ended up following Kotetsu. Knowing Tanjiro's temperament, he might very well still be dining with Kotetsu at this moment. Riesel paid them no mind, focusing solely on bringing the old book back and diligently studying it. Whether or not he understood the contents, he meticulously remembered everything. Good, the blueprint is in this book. At the end of the book, Riesel finally found the blueprint for Yorichi Type 0. Surprisingly, this blueprint not only included illustrations but also detailed textual explanations. It meticulously described Yorichi Type 0's design principles, operational theories, and even set out 108 motion patterns for it. From this, it was evident that Kotetsu's ancestor had devoted considerable care to Yorichi Type 0 and sincerely hoped that his descendants could inherit his knowledge and ideals, thus advancing the art of mechanical doll crafting. On the last page, it appeared that Kotetsu's ancestor had left behind a message. Without a doubt, the birth of Yorichi Type 0 was a miracle, but its prototype, the swordsman revered as a god by everyone in the Demon Slayer Corps, was an even more incredible miracle. It makes one wonder involuntarily why such a character was born as a human and not as a god. Yorichi Type 0 is undoubtedly the strongest and most outstanding mechanical doll in the world. However, it ultimately failed to fully replicate that swordsman's power. For someone like me who is determined to reproduce that swordsman's power in a mechanical doll, it can only be considered an unfinished product. Unfortunately, I no longer have time to continue researching and improving. I hope that future generations inheriting my knowledge will continuously refine this knowledge, allowing that swordsman's swordsmanship to reappear in this world. From this message, Riesel could discern the writer's sighs, pride, and regrets. Recreating Sugikuni Yorichi's power with a mechanical doll. Riesel muttered inwardly, then chuckled. If it could really be done, the value of this legacy would probably increase by more than 1,000-fold. As midnight approached, Riesel closed the old book he had been poring over. He had completely memorized the contents of the book, whether it was the illustrations or the blueprint for Yorichi Type 0. If Kotetsu found out about this, he would surely be astonished, wouldn't he? Even an ordinary person couldn't finish reading through such a thick book in just a day, let alone memorize it. Yet, Riesel not only read it but also memorized it effortlessly in less than a day, almost inhuman. It was thanks to his exceptional memory that he could effortlessly recall the entire contents of the book. Now, when Riesel closed his eyes and thought back, the blueprint for Yorichi Type 0 would appear before him, displaying every part and component on its surface and inside. As he deepened his comprehension of the blueprint, he carefully confirmed the positions, structures, and materials of each part, one after another. After a while, Riesel extended his hand. Shing! Suddenly, a burst of light radiated in front of his palm. It was a glow formed from magical energy. Before long, the light transformed into a magic circle, flew out from his palm, and hovered above the ground like a scanner, moving upward. As the magic circle pulsated, a mechanical doll slowly materialized and eventually took shape. It's done. Riesel opened his eyes and looked at the mechanical doll before him with a smile. What he saw was a mechanical doll that was truly identical to Yorichi Type 0. He was certain that this mechanical doll was identical to Yorichi Type 0, both internally and externally. The only difference was probably that it didn't need a key to activate. Yorichi Type 0 was activated with a single key and could change its combat mode based on the opponent's combat style by twisting its finger joints, thus being regarded as a combat training mechanical doll. However, he felt that if every doll had to be activated with a key and needed a special method to adjust its action, it would be too troublesome. For this reason, he removed these two functions. Now, after removing them, how should the mechanical doll be activated, and how should its combat mode be adjusted to fit the situation? It was simple. Contract. Riesel extended his hand once more and pressed it against the mechanical doll's forehead, chanting a contract magic. Indeed, he formed a contract with the mechanical doll before him. It wasn't an attendant contract, nor was it a slavery contract, it was a summoning and employing contract. On the Akasha continent, contract magic wasn't limited to just attendant and slavery contracts. For instance, the contract magic Riesel was using now was commonly employed by control system magicians. Control system magic referred to any magic capable of controlling and dominating external entities or concepts, including but not limited to summoning magic. Control system magicians proficient in summoning magic often used it to summon monsters or dolls and control them for combat purposes. The summoning and employing contract was precisely the type of magic control system magicians used to control monsters or dolls. By imprinting contract marks on monsters or dolls, control system magicians could summon and employ these entities for combat purposes. At this moment, Riesel was doing the same. Once he imprinted the contract mark on the mechanical doll's forehead, Riesel withdrew his hand. When one looked at the mechanical doll, a pattern resembling a magic circle was inscribed on its forehead. Come. Riesel stepped back 2 paces and commanded the mechanical doll. Caw. Asterisk. Suddenly, the mechanical doll moved, obediently walking toward Riesel as ordered. Stop. As Riesel issued another command, the mechanical doll immediately halted its steps. Turn left. As Riesel gave a new instruction, the mechanical doll turned to the left without hesitation. Turn right. Move forward. Move backward. Stay in place. When Riesel gave one command after another, the mechanical doll complied with all of them perfectly. Seeing this, a smile appeared on Riesel's face. Isn't this much more flexible than Yorichi Type 0? Obviously, Yorichi Type 0 not only required a key to start but, once activated, it entered a preset combat mode and operated according to that mode, rigid and without flexibility. If one didn't adjust the finger positions to change Yorichi Type 0's actions, it might even repeat its movements after completing the preset actions. As a result, anyone who had fought against it could gradually predict its movement trajectory and action patterns, provided they could persevere. In the original work, Muichiro could eventually defeat Yorichi Type 0, possibly because of this reason. However, this problem had been solved now. The newly made mechanical doll no longer operated with a key and predetermined movements but was directly manipulated by its creator, Riesel, through contract magic. With just a command from him, the mechanical doll could move and engage in combat accordingly. If I were to personally control this mechanical doll in battle, its combat effectiveness would probably increase significantly. Riesel circled around the mechanical doll while contemplating. Now that I think about it, maybe the parts and components on this mechanical doll could be replaced. Riesel intended to upgrade the materials on the mechanical doll's body, using metals with similar weight and properties. Originally, the materials used for the mechanical doll were generally wood, with only the internal parts being metallic. If all these materials were improved, its performance would definitely increase. As for which metal to use, Riesel needed to conduct thorough testing. Otherwise, if changing the weight or structure of the mechanical doll made its operation difficult and caused its performance to decrease rather than increase, it would be unfortunate. Well, there's still time, let's try it out slowly. At this moment, Riesel was like a child with a new toy, ready to thoroughly enjoy it, his smile never faded. And so, the night passed in this manner. The next day, early in the morning, Riesel, still on the veranda of his house, looked as though he hadn't slept all night. It was not without reason. At this moment, he gazed at the figure before him and exhaled deeply. Finally done. A brand new mechanical doll stood before Riesel. Chapter 196, Yorichi Type 1. In the deep woods, a clearing awaited. As the day broke, this once deserted clearing, where no one dared to tread, now welcomed an unexpected visitor who had caused quite a stir here just yesterday. Asterisk. Under Kotetsu's control, Yorichi Type 0 slowly entered the clearing and stood motionless, resembling a samurai awaiting orders from their lord. Tanjiro and Kotetsu arrived early and were waiting for Riesel's arrival. He hasn't come yet. Kotetsu impatiently scanned the other end of the forest path, eagerly anticipating Riesel's arrival. He might not be here so soon. Ready for combat with his sword in hand, Tanjiro answered, but upon seeing Kotetsu's impatience, he added. Morning is when Big Brother and the Hashira train. Perhaps he'll come after their training, which is in the afternoon. Afternoon. Kotetsu couldn't hide his disappointment. Do we really have to wait that long? Before Tanjiro could respond, he suddenly sniffed the air curiously, his nose twitching slightly. It seems Big Brother is here, Tanjiro remarked as his nose caught Riesel's scent. Really? Kotetsu's spirits immediately lifted. Before long, they saw Riesel slowly approaching from the end of the path. Indeed, he had arrived as Tanjiro said. Surprisingly, before beginning his training session with the Hashira, Riesel had made his way here first. However, He wasn't alone. A figure followed closely behind him, resembling a subordinate. Upon seeing this figure, both Tanjiro and Kotetsu exchanged surprised looks. "Yorichi Type 0, Kotetsu exclaimed in shock. "Mr. Sugikuni," Tanjiro murmured, staring in disbelief at the figure. Of course, Tanjiro wasn't addressing Rizel but rather the swordsman who shared a deep connection with his ancestors and left behind sun-breathing and the Hanafuda earrings to his family, the actual Sugikuni Yorichi. Standing behind Rizel, the figure resembled Yorichi Type 0 but lacked the mechanical appearance, appearing more akin to a living human, a swordsman with a gentle demeanor. "Sorry for keeping you waiting." Rizel greeted Tanjiro and Kotetsu with a wide grin. Although he seemed to be in a good mood, neither Tanjiro nor Kotetsu noticed, their attention wholly captivated by the figure that stopped beside him. What's going on? Kotetsu was utterly confused. "Big brother." Tanjiro looked at Rizel, then glanced at the figure by his side, which closely resembled Yorichi Type 0, his eyes filled with disbelief. "Let me introduce it to you. Its name is Yorichi Type 1. Rizel explained to Tanjiro and Kotetsu, who looked puzzled. "Since the first generation model is called Type 0, I named this one, Type 1. How is it? Not too bad, right?" How could Tanjiro and Kotetsu not understand what he meant? "Is it also a mechanical doll?" Tanjiro's face showed even more astonishment. "No fucking way." Kotetsu jumped up in shock. His shock was understandable. "You made a mechanical doll? Did you make another Yorichi Type 0? No way." Kotetsu shouted repeatedly. "Even if you figured out my ancestors' creation methods, making another Yorichi Type 0 overnight is impossible." Shortly afterward, he leapt directly toward Type 1 and began feeling around its body. As he touched it here and there, he discovered that Type 1 was quite different from Type 0. Firstly, its outer shell material was clearly different from Type 0's wooden feel, it was more like steel, cold and hard. Secondly, Type 1 didn't have 6 arms and 6 swords like Type 0, it only had 2 hands and a pair of swords. Thirdly, the humanoid appearance of Type 1 was also highly realistic, at first glance appearing completely human-like, unlike Type 0, where the lines and joints of the doll were visible on its face and joints. In light of this, the appearance of Type 1 was identical to Yorichi as seen by Rizel in his dream, except that Yorichi only had 1 sword, while Type 1 had 2 swords. Due to improvements in materials and performance by Rizel, Type 1 didn't need 6 arms and 6 swords like Type 0 to reproduce Yorichi's swordsmanship, only 2 swords were enough. As a result, compared to Type 0, although Type 1 had improved performance, its combat power didn't increase much. It only went from barely entering level 4 to roughly equivalent to the middle level 4. In terms of combat power, it was already on par with powerful Hashira like Kyujiro, Tsunemi, Tengen, Obanai, and Giyu before using the Demon Slayer mark, but it still fell short compared to the upper ranks. However, the change in materials, by using metal inside and out, significantly increased its defensive power and resistance to attacks by an entire level. In other words, Type 1, born from Rizel's hands and modifications, had combat power equivalent to level 4 while being specialized in END. In terms of End alone, Type 1 could match level 5, even ordinary level 4 opponents wouldn't leave a scratch on its surface. In fact, such beings also existed in the dungeon of Danmachi. It was the floor boss of the 17th floor, a supersized monster, Goliath. Goliath was classified as a level 4 monster specializing in END. Its skin was so tough that it couldn't be broken without at least the attack from a level 5 first-class adventurer or equipment of 2nd class or higher. Type 1 belonged to the same category as Goliath, just with a smaller size. Yet, despite being smaller, Type 1 was much faster and more agile than Goliath, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was the mechanical doll that Rizel himself created, based on Type 0 with some improvements. It can't be. Kotetsu felt as if his worldview was shattering. He couldn't believe that the most outstanding mechanical doll invented by his ancestor, crafted with a lifetime's effort, had not only been created overnight by someone else but also improved to be stronger. For him, this wasn't something easy to accept. "For you." Rizel handed the old book back to Kotetsu. "It has been very helpful to me. Thanks a lot." Quote. Kotetsu looked bewildered at the book Rizel handed him. After a moment of silence, Kotetsu reached out and took it. Can this also be used for training, big brother? On the other hand, since Tanjiro didn't have the same complex feelings as Kotetsu, upon knowing that Rizel had created another mechanical doll, he only felt excitement. He looked at Type 1, which resembled a human samurai in appearance, feeling eager to try it out. Not just for training, but it can also be put into battle to fight demons. Rizel said calmly, "Don't worry, I'll fix Type 0 first." Upon hearing this, Kotetsu regained his spirits. "Can you fix it?" Kotetsu hurriedly asked. "No problem." Rizel smiled at him. "I can even upgrade it if needed." Since Rizel could use his magic to create Type 1 with higher performance than Type 0, he naturally could use his magic to upgrade Type 0 to have the same performance as Type 1. And no need. Kotetsu shook his head. Just fixing it will be enough. He was actually a bit afraid that Type 0 would be transformed by Rizel into something completely unrecognizable. After all, it was an heirloom left by his ancestor, the masterpiece of his family. For this reason, rather than treating Type 0 as a combat mechanical doll, he actually saw it as a spiritual support and a symbol of his family. It would have been fine if only minor improvements were made, but Rizel's modification was almost like creating a new and different mechanical doll, which frightened him. As a result, he declined Rizel's offer. "Okay." Rizel shrugged casually. "Just fix it directly then." "What do you need me to do?" Kotetsu asked eagerly. "I have tools at home and a workshop. If you need anything, you can come over." "No, none of those are necessary." Rizel shook his head. "We'll do it right here directly. Just wait for me." With that, he walked over to the center of the clearing and approached Type 0. At the same time, Type 1 immediately followed him like an emotionless personal attendant. It was yet another thing that shattered Kotetsu's worldview. No choice. A mechanical doll was, after all, just a doll. Without the necessary controls, it wouldn't move at all. However, Type 1 was clearly different. It didn't need Rizel to control it, nor did it require any buttons or switches on its body. If he stopped, it stopped. If he walked, it walked. It was almost like it had a mind of its own. So this is the mechanical doll created by the master of the divine sword. Kotetsu began to understand why the swordsmiths in the village, usually so full of themselves, had been so ecstatic upon seeing Rizel's sword. Surely that sword was just like Type 1, a creation that surpassed any human understanding or imagination. With their skills, those swordsmiths could never have imagined why such a sword could exist in this world and must have seen it as a divine creation, a divine sword. Now Kotetsu felt the same way. He could hardly imagine why a mechanical doll like Type 1 could exist in this world, almost thinking Rizel had created life itself. Unaware of Kotetsu's thoughts, Rizel observed Type 0 for a moment, then suddenly used the transparent world. As expected, it's in here. Having confirmed something, Rizel reached out and grabbed Type 0's head, giving it a firm twist. Snap! Asterisk. With a crisp sound, Type 0's head was twisted off. H. Seeing this scene, Kotetsu touched his two cheeks and let out a scream of sheer terror. Rizel extended his hand again, this time reaching into Type 0's neck and through its body. Before long, he pulled a sword out from inside Type 0. Chapter 197, Sugikuni Yorichi's Sword. Rizel extended his hand again, this time reaching into Type 0's neck and through its body. Before long, he pulled a sword out from inside Type 0. It was an old sword housed in a worn-out scabbard, looking like it had quite a long history. What is that? Kotetsu, who had been screaming, saw Rizel pull an old sword out from Type 0's body, his eyes widening in shock. There's a sword inside the doll. Tanjiro was equally surprised. Clearly, no one had expected that a sword would be hidden inside Type 0. Only Rizel, as if he already knew about the sword's existence, drew it out and nonchalantly reattached Type 0's head. In the next moment, Rizel reached out, placed his hand on Type 0's chest, and used his magic, causing a dazzling magic circle to appear on his hand where it touched the Type 0. However, the magic circle flashed in and out quickly, appearing and disappearing so fast that Tanjiro and Kotetsu didn't even have time to react before it was gone. In the blink of an eye, Type 0 had become as good as new, as if it had just been returned from the factory after maintenance, looking pristine and clean. Nodding his head, Riesel withdrew his hand. "All right, this should do it," Riesel said as he returned to Kotetsu's side. "Go check if it's fixed properly." "All right." Kotetsu, with a blank expression, stepped forward. His mind couldn't keep up with the rapid developments. First, Riesel created a mechanical doll overnight that was better than his ancestor's doll. Then, there was actually a sword hidden inside Type 0 that he didn't know about. Finally, Riesel merely touched its chest and claimed to have fixed it. Evidently, these incredible events had left Kotetsu's mind completely overwhelmed. Now, he felt like nothing mattered anymore. Since it was all beyond his understanding, he might as well pretend he hadn't seen anything. Only Tanjiro remained astonished by Riesel pulling a sword out of Type 0. "Big brother, that sword is?" Tanjiro asked, looking utterly confused. Riesel didn't immediately clear up Tanjiro's confusion but first raised the old sword and drew it from its scabbard. In the next second, a rusty blade appeared before their eyes. "This is Sugikuni Yorichi's sword." Riesel held the rusty sword and said something that shocked Tanjiro and Kotetsu. "Mr. Sugikuni's sword." Tanjiro was shocked. "There's no need to be so surprised. It's an easy deduction," Riesel explained calmly upon seeing Tanjiro's expression. Yorichi Type 0 was a mechanical doll made during the Sengoku period, so this sword must have been placed inside it during that time. Although the blade is rusty, you can still feel a faint trace of sunlight energy, proving it's a Nichiren sword. Also, the blade of this Nichiren sword has a faint black color, leaving no doubt that it's a black Nichiren sword. In this case, a black Nichiren sword preserved since the Sengoku period could only belong to Sugikuni Yorichi. Riesel's explanation quickly overloaded Tanjiro's brain, but as the protagonist, he keenly noticed something important. "Mr. Sugikuni's Nichiren sword is black?" Tanjiro asked in surprise. "Isn't a Nichiren sword with a black blade something only people who are incompetent have?" What he said was a small yet significant rumor within the Demon Slayer Corps. Because Nichiren swords reflect the breathing style suited to their wielder, anyone who obtained a Nichiren sword immediately knew which direction to develop their skills. However, there were two exceptions. One was the people who couldn't change the color of their Nichiren sword. Nichiren swords only reacted to swordsmen with a certain amount of skill. If someone who couldn't even master swordsmanship picked up a Nichiren sword, it wouldn't change color. In other words, those who couldn't change the color of their Nichiren sword were recognized as novices and failures within the Demon Slayer Corps. The other exception was those who made the blade of their Nichiren sword turn black. A Nichiren sword with a black blade was extremely rare. Throughout the centuries-long history of the Demon Slayer Corps, only a handful of people had a black blade. Furthermore, a black Nichiren sword didn't correspond to any of the breathing styles passed down within the Demon Slayer Corps, leaving the wielder with no clear path to develop their skills. Because of this, wielders of black Nichiren swords generally couldn't find the breathing style that best suited them, earning them the reputation of being incompetent. Like Tanjiro, who used water breathing, which clearly didn't suit him while fighting Type 0 yesterday, causing his combat power to weaken and be affected to some extent. Over time, some people within the Demon Slayer Corps started to believe that wielders of black Nichiren swords were a bad omen, believing that they could never achieve greatness and that only the incompetent would wield such a Nichiren sword. Tanjiro had obviously heard this rumor. Regarding this matter, Riesel only felt funny. Sugikuni Yorichi's Nichiren sword indeed has a black blade. My Nichiren sword is also the same, Riesel said with a faint smile. Are you trying to say that both he and I are incompetent swordsmen? Upon hearing this question, Tanjiro immediately shook his head vigorously. He couldn't afford to joke about that. If such words got out, he would be drowned in spit. Yorichi was the founder of the breathing style, the greatest swordsman of the Sengoku period, and the most powerful swordsman in the history of the Demon Slayer Corps. Riesel, on the other hand, not only could easily slay upper ranks and effortlessly crush all the Hashira, but he was also seen as the hope to defeat Muzan. If these two were considered incompetent, then every swordsman in the world would be trash, the most incompetent among incompetents. Although I can't be certain, I believe that those whose blades turn black are most suited for sun breathing. Riesel continued his explanation. Sugikuni Yorichi's blade is black, my blade is black, and even yours, someone who's inherited sun breathing, is black. With all this evidence, the theory that swordsmen with black blades are most compatible with sun breathing is about 80% likely to be right. Moreover, since people like them are so rare, coupled with breathing styles in the Sengoku period not being as widespread as they are now, this sword likely passed down from the Sengoku period as the Nichiren sword used by Sugikuni Yorichi. Of course, that was what the original work also told, which was why Riesel spoke with such certainty. Kotetsu's ancestor had a close relationship with Sugikuni Yorichi. The fact that he could create a mechanical doll based on Sugikuni Yorichi proves he observed him up close and very carefully. For someone like him, getting Sugikuni Yorichi's Nichiren sword isn't surprising. So, when he created Yorichi Type 0, he hid the sword inside it. At this point, Riesel shrugged his shoulders. As for his intentions by doing that, who knows? Upon hearing the long explanation, Tanjiro looked at the old sword in Riesel's hand. Obviously, the sword was rusty, making him doubt whether it could even cut through a leaf. However, after Riesel said that this was Yorichi's Nichiren sword, for some reason, Tanjiro suddenly grew fond of the sword before him. He felt that this sword seemed to be waiting for him to find it, and it had an inexplicable attraction to him. Ding! Ling! Suddenly, the Hanafuda earrings on Tanjiro's ears swayed and emitted a ringing sound. After more than 300 years, two items that once belonged to Yorichi reunited at this moment. Riesel held the old sword, looked at it for a moment, and then used his magic. Buzz! Accompanied by a buzzing sound, magical energy flowed into the old sword, causing the rust on it to gradually disappear. In no time, the old sword was no longer rusty but revealed its true sharpness, looking as if it had been newly forged, bright and pristine. Needless to say, Riesel had restored Yorichi's sword. Following this, Riesel sheathed it and then tossed it to Tanjiro. Tanjiro was first stunned, then hurriedly took the sword. It's something useful for you. Didn't I say you would find something useful before? Riesel said with a smile. His words quickly reminded Tanjiro of what he had said yesterday before they saw Type 0. Yesterday, Riesel had said to him that maybe he would find something useful here. Was this sword the thing? Yeah, it's this sword. Riesel continued as if reading Tanjiro's mind. Since your family inherited Sugikuni Yorichi's will, this sword naturally belongs in your hands. But, isn't this something you found, big brother? Tanjiro quickly shook his head. Besides, you also inherited Mr. Sugikuni's sun breathing. I'm different from you, Riesel denied calmly. Sun breathing coming to me is more of a deal rather than an inheritance. The connection between me and him is nothing like your family's. But, Tanjiro looked hesitant. I already have my own sword, which is much stronger than this sword. Even if you gave it to me, it would just gather dust. Riesel smiled slightly. It's better if you use it. Afterward, he turned his head to look in Kotetsu's direction. You don't mind, do you? Just take it. Kotetsu glanced over and spoke indifferently. I don't have the talent for swordsmithing since I'm not a swordsmith anyway. If you gave me that sword, I wouldn't even be able to polish it properly. Consider it the payment for repairing Yorichi Type 0. As he said this, Kotetsu carefully touched Type 0's exterior, checking its condition. He had basically confirmed that it was truly repaired, and of course, the repair was perfect. At this rate, Type 0 would last at least a few more decades. Kotetsu felt satisfied with this and didn't care about Yorichi's sword. All right then. After hearing their words, Tanjiro finally nodded and accepted the sword. Riesel turned his head to Type 1 following him, his smile widening. Hope this gives those demons a big surprise. Chapter 198. The Calm Before the Storm. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. During this month, the entire Demon Slayer Corps was immersed in an intense and lively training atmosphere, filling the training ground with a constant stream of people. Riesel acted as if nothing had happened and continued using the 9 Hashira as sparring partners punching bags. He trained with them every day, engaging in heated battles. In this circumstances, one of the Hashira finally succeeded in awakening the transparent world. It was none other than Gyume, who awakened the transparent world on the 3rd day of the month. As the strongest in the Demon Slayer Corps, Gyume proved his worth through his actions, inspiring and motivating the other Hashira who hadn't yet awakened the transparent world. Consequently, the other Hashira redoubled their efforts and training, gradually awakening the transparent world one by one. Around the 7th day, Obanai succeeded in awakening the transparent world. Around the 10th day, Muichiro succeeded in awakening the transparent world. Truthfully, it was no surprise that they were the ones who awakened the transparent world first. After all, these two, like Gyume, were originally the ones who awakened the transparent world at the end of the original work. Now, with Riesel's guidance, they were the earliest to awaken it. Of course, the other Hashira didn't want to be left behind either. Around the 13th day, Tsunemi succeeded in awakening the transparent world. Around the 16th day, Giyu succeeded in awakening the transparent world. Around the 22nd day, Kyujiro succeeded in awakening the transparent world. By this point, out of the 9 Hashira, 6 had fully awakened all 3 abilities. Only Shinobu, Mitsuri, and Tengen were left, seemingly not cut out for this, as they still hadn't succeeded in awakening the transparent world. Without a doubt, this left the 3 of them feeling quite dejected. Even Shinobu, who usually had a smile on her face, could be seen with a hint of gloom in her eyes. Mitsuri often looked tearful, which prompted a certain serpent Hashira to secretly give her extra training sessions, personally teaching her the principles of the transparent world. Tengen, on the other hand, spent his days muttering to himself, sitting in a tree with his arms crossed, eyes closed, lost in thought. Evidently, the successive successes of their comrades made these 3 increasingly anxious. Seeing this, Riesel couldn't do much about it. He had said it before, the transparent world was different from the other 2 abilities, as it was not something you could just get whenever you wanted. If it really couldn't be done, then it couldn't be done, there were no shortcuts. At least, in Riesel's view, if Shinobu and the other 2 hadn't awakened the transparent world by now, it was probably a lost cause. In the end, they could only depend on themselves. During this period, Kagaya suddenly summoned Riesel to meet with him. When Riesel saw Kagaya again, he was in a rather dire state. Now, Kagaya was completely bedridden, spending his days lying under the blankets, where even speaking took considerable effort. It seemed he was truly nearing his end. I probably don't have much time left, so I'll say what needs to be said. Kagaya spoke with the demeanor of someone who could pass away at any moment. Riesel frowned deeply as he heard this, but he could do nothing. In truth, he had already attempted to treat Kagaya. Dia Fradel was, after all, among the best healing magic, capable not only of treating injuries but also of dispelling curses. With this magic, Riesel initially believed he could cure the illness plaguing Kagaya, as the disease afflicting him was a curse born from Muzan. In the Heian period 1,000 years ago, Muzan, who had not yet become a demon, was actually a member of the Ubuyashiki family. In other words, there was a blood relationship between the Ubuyashiki family and Muzan. After Muzan became a demon 1,000 years ago, the Ubuyashiki family seemed to collectively fall under a curse. Regardless of who they were, the children born to them would become weak, sickly, and die soon after birth. Especially boys, with a very high chance of early death, almost causing the Ubuyashiki family's bloodline to be severed. Later, generation after generation, men in the Ubuyashiki family would marry women chosen by a priest in an attempt to delay the curse and prolong their lives. Even so, no one from the family could live to be over 30 years old. Because of this, every member of the Ubuyashiki family was weak and frail, and they died early without exception. Kagaya was only 23 years old this year, but he had been seriously ill for some time and was expected to pass away soon because of this serious illness. As Riesel believed that Dia Fradel could dispel curses, he thought it might be able to remove the curse from Kagaya. Unfortunately, he failed. Apparently, this curse was not imposed on individuals but on the entire family's bloodline. In other words, if Riesel wanted to dispel this curse, he had to completely remove the curse from the entire members of the Ubuyashiki family at once. However, not only was Muzan himself a member of the Ubuyashiki family, but he was also the source of the curse. Hence, as long as he was still out there, even if Riesel removed the curse from every member of the Ubuyashiki family, the curse would only return to them, like a recurrent ulcer in the bone. Clearly, this meant that the curse on Kagaya could not be dispelled and that his body would only grow weaker over time. Kagaya calling Rizal this time was evidently to leave a will. First, Kagaya gave Rizal some information. Recently, incidents of human disappearances have been frequent in towns everywhere. From Kagaya's mouth, the missing people were mostly violent offenders or martial artists with exceptional combat abilities, even those who had committed sins deserving execution. Without exception, they all vanished suddenly without any warning. Some disappeared from their homes, while others never returned after leaving, causing quite a stir in society. According to the intelligence network of the Demon Slayer Corps, these people had brief encounters with demons before their disappearances. Initially, the Demon Slayer Corps believed they had been eaten by the demons, but later realized something was amiss. After all, these people shared a common trait: they either possessed combat abilities or exhibited some tendency toward violence. Since this information raised serious concerns within the Demon Slayer Corps, it eventually reached Kagaya. Also, not long ago, an entire town to the east suddenly had everyone disappear. Men, women, children, thousands of people, all gone overnight without a trace. Kagaya relayed this information to Rizal, who furrowed his brow. So many people disappearing all at once. Any sane person would know this was definitely not a good sign. Humans were, after all, a precious resource for demons, no matter how you looked at it. Not only did they serve as food, nourishing demons and enhancing their power, but they could also become demons themselves if Muzan gave them his blood, immediately shedding their human identity and joining the ranks of demons. Now, with a large number of humans disappearing en masse, Rizal couldn't believe it was anything other than the handiwork of demons. Whether they were consumed as food, used to increase the power of demons, or transformed into demons for combat power, it was all extremely bad news for the Demon Slayer Corps. I can feel Kibutsuji Muzan's power increasing rapidly, Kagaya continued. It was precisely because of this that his physical condition was deteriorating this fast. It was a manifestation of the curse running through his bloodline. When the curse strengthened, it meant that Muzan, the source of the curse, was becoming stronger. Be careful. Kagaya lay in bed, his face covered with a towel, obscuring his almost decayed face. We are preparing, and so are the demons. A great battle is approaching. The decisive battle that will determine the future between humankind and demonkind is getting closer. And you are the key to this decisive battle. With what seemed like his last ounce of strength, Kagaya smiled and left his final words for Rizal. I don't know if I can hold on until that day. If I can't, then the Demon Slayer Corps and everything else will be in your hands, Your Excellency. Leaving behind these words, Kagaya lost consciousness. Master Kagaya, Kagaya's wife, Amane, rushed in with their children. Rizal also approached, glancing at Kagaya's body, realizing he had only lost consciousness, not passed away. Still, his aura was as faint as a dying candle in the wind, on the verge of extinguishing. In fact, after Rizal awakened the transparent world and took a glance at Kagaya's condition, the sight was so unbearable. Not much time left, Rizal understood this clearly, quietly observing the tense efforts of those around Kagaya for a moment before silently leaving the room. On the same day, all the Hashira unusually did not appear at the training ground. Instead, they all came here, guarding Kagaya throughout the day. Nighttime. At this moment, Rizal sat on his house's veranda, looking out over the courtyard and watching the bright moon in the night sky. Even though the moon hung high and clear, it gradually took on a crimson hue, clearly a lunar eclipse. Meanwhile, in the castle with an inverted space and bizarre layout, the blood-stained demon king, Kibutsuji Muzan, appeared silently. He also gazed at the night sky, at the bright crimson moon, the traces of blood on his lips stark against his pale complexion. It's time. Muzan revealed a cruel smile. It's time to fulfill this 1,000-year-old wish. Chapter 199. I Want Your Life. Under the moonlit night, a gentle breeze brushed by, slowly dispersing the clouds, revealing the blood-stained, crimson moon that illuminated the earth in darkness. Rizal bathed in the ominous moonlight, sitting on his house's veranda, sipping tea quietly from a small wooden table. Hermit lay quietly by his side, resting on the wooden floor like an ordinary sword. Undoubtedly, the scene appeared serene and peaceful, until Riesel suddenly spoke up. "Since you're here, why hide?" His calm voice echoed on the veranda and courtyard under the moonlit night, abrupt and lonely. However, no one responded to his question, making his words seem like mutterings, somewhat absurd. Yet, Riesel wasn't bothered and continued to leisurely drink his tea, as if on vacation. Whoosh! After a while, as a gust of wind finally swept through the courtyard, a figure appeared silently like a bat. He stood under the moonlit night, resembling a sovereign of the night, exuding an incredible aura. Yet, this aura held danger, coldness, and a hint of bloodthirst. Riesel didn't look at the figure, seemingly indifferent to their arrival, casually playing with his teacup. In such a situation, the figure remained silent for a long time before finally stepping onto the veranda and arriving in front of Riesel. "Sit." Riesel still didn't look at the figure, only saying this calmly. Quote. Neither responding nor complying, the figure remained silent, as if carefully observing Riesel, before sitting down after a while. "It's been a long time since I've sat face to face with someone like this." After sitting, the figure surprisingly said something like this. "I doubt it." Riesel's tone was indifferent as he responded. "You can perfectly imitate others, often blending in with crowds as an ordinary human. In that case, for the sake of disguise, you must have sat down and chatted with many people like this. You said it yourself, that's just a disguise." Saying this, the figure's face showed no expression. "Because it's a disguise, I have to endure it. Otherwise, how could an ordinary human possibly have the qualification to sit on equal terms with me? Hey, truly worthy of the demon king who's lived for millennia." Riesel chuckled with a serene smile, but there was a hint of amusement in his expression. "Your attitude that completely regards humans as inferior beings is indeed arrogant." At these words, the emotionless face of the demon king, Kibutsuji Muzan, revealed a cold smile. "That's because I have the right to be arrogant." Muzan's voice rang out slowly. "I have lived longer than anyone. My power is greater than anyone's. I am the hunter in the darkness, and humans are the prey. On the food chain, I have always been at the top. Just based on that, I have the right to say such things." When Muzan spoke these words, there was no trace of pride or superiority in his tone, only a matter of fact indifference. He genuinely believed this and considered it a matter of course. In other words, there was no need for pride or superiority, as stating the fact was all that was required. Riesel did not offer any rebuttal to Muzan's statement, as, to some extent, what he said was not entirely wrong. Humans were indeed the food of demons. In terms of the food chain, demons occupied a hierarchical position where they were above as hunters, while humans were below as prey, like wolves and sheep and grass, chickens and insects, or larger insects and smaller ones. However, the food chain is just that, a chain. Even an elephant, which is definitely at the top, can be taken down by enough ants biting it. Riesel's calm voice extinguished the sense of terrifying inevitability brought by Muzan. Muzan looked deeply into Riesel's eyes for a while before speaking up. "That's why I've come here." Indeed, Muzan had come here precisely to avoid being killed by those so-called ants, or rather, he had chosen to confront the terrifying Riesel face to face for the sake of achieving true immortality. As long as he could obtain it, becoming a perfect being who no longer feared even sunlight, who would be able to kill him then? Not even the resurrection of Sugikuni Yorichi himself. During the Sengoku period, Muzan had nearly been slain by Yorichi because sun-breathing wielded the power of the sun, and Yorichi's bright red Nichiren sword could inflict damage on demons akin to sunlight, almost leading to Muzan's death. If Muzan could completely overcome this weakness to sunlight, even if someone were stronger than him and even defeated him, he would never die. Believing this, Muzan's gaze at Riesel became intense. "You mentioned that the blue spider lily is with you." Muzan finally spoke up about his true purpose. "That much is true, correct?" He chose to sit down and converse with Riesel precisely to clarify this point. He held on to the notion of believing rather than doubting, clinging to a slight hope and an overwhelming obsession, hence his decision to confront Riesel. Otherwise, given his cowardly nature, after witnessing Riesel's overwhelming power, which not only scared him but also awakened his trauma, he would never opt for a direct confrontation but would instead hide away and wait for Riesel to die of old age. Now, it was finally the most crucial moment. After bringing up the question, Muzin stared fixedly at Riesel, his two fists tightly clenched, feeling an unprecedented sense of nervousness. It was unprecedented for a ruthless, inhumane demon king who had caused countless tragedies to feel nervous, and Riesel was likely the first to achieve this. One could imagine how furious Muzin would be if he discovered that Riesel had deceived him and that the matter of the blue spider lily was nothing more than a lie. However, Riesel's next words were akin to heavenly music for Muzin. "It's true." Riesel finally turned his head to face Muzin. "The blue spider lily is right here with me." Riesel wasn't lying to Muzin about this. Since the attack on the headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps, after Riesel whispered those crucial words to Gyoko's ears, for 2 months, he not only trained the Hashira in the swordsmith village but also utilized the Corps intelligence network to discreetly bring back a blue spider lily. "You probably didn't know," Riesel said with a faint smile. "The blue spider lily is a rare plant that blooms only during the daytime. It usually grows in places where it can receive prolonged sunlight, flowering only 2 to 3 times a year. Without special preservation methods, it wilts quickly once deprived of sunlight." His words caused Muzin to widen his eyes slightly, revealing a flicker of fierce emotion. His expression at this moment was as if the truth of the world had finally been brought to light. No wonder after so many years of searching and employing numerous demons to help him find the blue spider lily, he still found nothing. Blooming only during the daytime, this condition alone made it impossible for any demon to find the blue spider lily. After all, demons couldn't tolerate sunlight. Exposure to it would annihilate them instantly, including himself. Moreover, since the blue spider lily only grew in places where it could receive prolonged sunlight, blooming 2 to 3 times a year, even humans would find it difficult to obtain a fully grown blue spider lily under such conditions, let alone demons. Even if humans acquired the blue spider lily during the daytime, improper preservation that prevented it from receiving sunlight would cause the flower to wither. In other words, the chance of demons discovering and delivering the blue spider lily to him was practically zero from the start. This realization sent a shiver down Muzin's spine. If Riesel hadn't uncovered the truth here, even if he continued searching indefinitely, he might never have found the blue spider lily. Fortunately for him, now was different. Here it is, the flower. Riesel placed a wooden box on the small wooden table. Quote. Muzin stared at the wooden box, emitting a terrifying aura akin to that of a demon from hell. He could feel the wooden box radiating energy equivalent to sunlight. Clearly, scarlet ores and scarlet crimson iron sands were likely mixed into the box, making the materials similar to those used for Nichiren swords. Such a box was undoubtedly the most suitable for storing the blue spider lily, which needed sunlight to bloom. Right before Muzin, Riesel opened the wooden box. In the next second, a blue flower was seen inside the wooden box. Seeing this flower, Muzin's breathing became heavier. This is it. This is it. Without a doubt, this was the blue spider lily he sought for millennia, no mistake. He had already thoroughly studied the book of the doctor who had prepared his medicines, memorizing the appearance, characteristics, and even the scent of the blue spider lily, thinking about it day and night, constantly confirming the flower's appearance. As a result, the moment he saw the blue flower, Muzin was certain that this was indeed the blue spider lily. At this moment, Riesel's voice rang out again. "By the way, it is estimated that this is the only blue spider lily left in the world today." His somewhat ambiguous voice echoed in the silent veranda. "I personally ordered that only this one be brought back by those sent out to find the blue spider lily, while the rest were to be completely destroyed, uprooted entirely. Even if it tried to grow again, it's highly unlikely." Upon hearing this, Muzin could no longer control the fierce aura emanating from him. Quote. "Give it to me." With his last bit of willpower, Muzin restrained himself. "Give it to me. Whatever you want, I can get it for you." Evidently, this was Muzin's last bit of reason. In truth, he wanted to see if he could achieve his goal without fighting Riesel. After all, he still harbored some fear of Riesel. Unfortunately, his attempt was futile. "I don't want anything, but..." Riesel slowly shook his head before revealing a cold smile to Muzin. Quote. "I want your life." Chapter 200. Dawn of the Final Battle. "I don't want anything, but..." Riesel slowly shook his head before revealing a cold smile to Muzin. Quote dot dot dot, I want your life. Bang. Asterisk. On the tranquil veranda, a deafening noise erupted without warning. As soon as Riesel's voice fell, Musen could no longer restrain himself and erupted into action, smashing the small wooden table between them. He reached out toward Riesel, his arm transforming into a meat pillar-like whip. It was adorned with countless spikes and mouth-like openings, generating tremendous suction and creating a vortex. With a tearing force that shredded everything around it, it viciously attacked Riesel, who was just within arm's reach. Boom. Asterisk. As the small wooden table was grazed by the whip's assault, it shattered into pieces. At the same time, the wooden floor was torn apart by the massive vortex created by the suction on the whip, turning into fragments on the spot. Musen's strike was lethal enough to tear through everything, including the atmosphere, and even break the sound barrier. Without a doubt, hitting someone less than 2 meters away, like Riesel, was clearly effortless and almost instantaneous. Typically, anyone attacked so viciously by Musen would meet instant death. However, despite such a deadly and terrifying assault, Riesel managed to avoid being touched. Swish. Asterisk. As the sound of tearing echoed, a scorching hot black blade, ablaze with dancing flames like fiery flowers, sliced through the whip and Musen's arm, turning them both into minced meat. At some point, unnoticed, Riesel had grabbed Hermit, unsheathed it, and with one swift swing, severed Musen's arm. Musen felt an intense burning pain at the severed end of his arm, involuntarily letting out a groan of agony. Yet, he disregarded the searing pain and lunged toward midair, toward the small wooden box containing the blue spider lily. It's mine, Musen shouted triumphantly. However, his face, about to break into a wide grin, suddenly froze. Shua, 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 asterisk. Suddenly, a series of sky-splitting sounds rang out. Without warning, several figures streaked through the night sky, the sounds erupting from all directions of the veranda and courtyard. They approached at an extremely fast pace, surrounding Musen from all sides and unleashing a formidable aura. Flame breathing, third form, blooming flame undulation. Kyujuro came down from above, accompanied by a surging blaze of slash. Water breathing, seventh form, drop ripple thrust. Coming diagonally, in a straight line like ripples on water, Gyu made a sudden thrust. Wind breathing, eighth form, primary gale slash. After a sudden advance, Tsunemi swirled around Musen like a gust of wind, slashing in a spiral that tears through his body. Stone breathing, fifth form, arcs of justice. Gyume threw his axe and flail at Musen like two meteorites, their impacts capable of effortlessly striking and shattering the earth. Serpent breathing, second form, venom fangs of the narrow head. Obanai instantly appeared behind Musen and delivered a vertical slash to his neck, resembling the bite of a poisonous snake. Love breathing, first form, shivers of first love. Mitsuri performed swift strikes like whip lashes, intent on cutting Musen's body to pieces. Sound breathing, first form, roar. Accompanied by explosive sonic booms, Tengen made a lightning-fast strike. Mist breathing, fourth form, shifting flow slash. Like a ghost, Muichiro appeared with a sudden slash hidden within the mist. Insect breathing, dance of the bee sting, true flutter. Like a bee, Shinobu launched a fierce stab capable of piercing the skull. At this moment, all the Hashira suddenly appeared, surrounding Musen from all sides, unleashing the most powerful, merciless attacks of their lives. Kukai, 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 asterisk. The sound of blades cutting through flesh and bone resounded incessantly as the weapons of the Hashira sliced into Musen's body, leaving him covered in wounds, with blood gushing out. As several slashes struck Musen's neck, they successfully severed his head. Yes, the Demon King who survived for millennia, from the Heian period to the present day, had his head severed in this small veranda. However, get lost. Unexpectedly, Musen remained completely unaffected. One moment, he was covered in blood and flesh, the next moment, he was miraculously recovered, without a scratch. What? Every Hashira who witnessed this scene had their eyes wide in shock. However, with no time to think about what had happened, they quickly faced a furious onslaught like a storm. Bang, 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 asterisk. Suddenly, Muzan extended his tentacle-like flesh whips from his body, wildly thrashing around. One by one, they lashed out at every Hashira, sending them flying. Cough. Arg. Getting hit by the whips, the Hashira felt an unparalleled force slam into their bodies, they coughed up blood and were blasted away. Some crashed through walls, some fell into the courtyard, and others smashed through the ceiling, disappearing. Even though most of them were using the Demon Slayer mark and the transparent world, the 9 strongest members of the Demon Slayer Corps were completely overwhelmed by Muzan in an instant. "Where's the box?" Muzan was clearly displeased when he noticed the wooden box containing the blue spider lily was missing. In the next moment, however, his expression contorted into a grotesque display of anger, with countless veins bulging on his face as he glared furiously in one direction. In the distance, Riesel stood with a sword in one hand and a wooden box in the other, his eyes mocking him. Soon, with a swift movement, Riesel made the wooden box disappear from his grasp. Bastard! Muzan was instantly enraged, launching himself fiercely toward Riesel. Seeing this, Riesel remained unmoved, merely tightening his grip on Hermit, flames igniting around him. Boom. Under the moonlit night, in a corner of the Swordsmith village, a small residence with a courtyard exploded with a deafening roar, unleashing an endless shockwave. Amidst the shockwave, flames intertwined, blossoming like flowers in the dark night, shattering the entire courtyard into fragments. Riesel and Muzan appeared in the aftermath of the explosion, but their conditions were starkly different. Riesel was enveloped in flames, radiating intense heat, akin to a fire god descended, completely unscathed. Muzan, on the other hand, appeared as if he had been scorched by flames all over, slashed by a fire blade, not just charred but bearing multiple wounds that seemed incapable of regeneration. Damn it! Muzan seethed with anger. At the same time, Riesel looked somewhat surprised. Well, you avoided fatal injuries. Looks like you've actually made some progress since the Sengoku era, huh? Riesel remarked, letting out a statement that pricked Muzan's self-respect. He knew Riesel was referring to his encounter with Yorichi during the Sengoku period. Back then, due to his negligence and underestimation of Yorichi, who appeared as unassuming as an ordinary samurai from head to toe, he suffered a devastating and humiliating defeat, couldn't put up a decent resistance, and was left severely injured. But this time, although he was again grievously wounded, at least he had managed to avoid fatal injuries. Riesel deemed this progress, but to Muzan's ears, it felt nothing short of an insult. As a result, Muzan no longer harbored any illusions about getting the blue spider lily easily. "You leave me no choice," Muzan yelled in anger, veins bulging on his forehead. Nakime. With his yell, the world instantly shifted. The destroyed courtyard vanished. The moonlit night sky vanished. The village vanished. The surrounding mountains and forests also vanished. Riesel felt a dizzying sensation as everything around him transformed into a bizarre space where buildings were haphazardly arranged, some even upside down. As if thrown off a cliff, he fell into an endless darkness, a darkness that seemed to devour everything, an abyss. Seeing this, Riesel acted without hesitation, turning toward the direction of the abyss and swinging his sword. Boom. A burst of flames lifted his body skyward as if riding on a wave of fire, and in no time, he landed atop a building. Riesel quickly surveyed his surroundings. So, this is the Infinity Castle. He recognized it as the 12 Kazuki's headquarters. Kibutsuji Muzan. Riesel took a deep breath and called out defiantly. "Are you going to run again?" His words were met with a voice filled with anger and resentment. "Don't rush. If you want a decisive battle, then let's have it right here. I'll host you well in this Infinity Castle, where the spirits of the Ubuyashiki family have lingered to this day. Wish to kill me? Then come to the throne. Let's settle everything there." With these words, Muzan's voice faded away. Throne. Riesel squinted his eyes. It was a strange term to him. In the original work, there was no mention of any throne within the Infinity Castle. It was a chaotic castle, vast in its internal spaces, linking to many rooms and even places outside the castle itself. Finding this so-called throne in a place like this would be difficult. Fortunately, Riesel was prepared for this. He knew that as long as the demon named Nakime was around, if Muzan chose to fight seriously, he would surely select this advantageous terrain. For this reason, Riesel remained patient. All right, if you want to play, I'll play along. In the next second, flames swirled around Riesel's body, transforming him into what seemed like a blazing sun as he soared into the distance. Damn him. On the other side, Muzan was experiencing intense pain throughout his body, growling softly. I need to buy some time to heal my wounds first. Nakime, it's up to you next. Don't let him find me so quickly and make sure to annihilate the Demon Slayer core. As his words fell, a voice soon responded in Muzan's heart. Yes.